this while I'm also booting up my computer here, so, Rebecca.
Yes, sir.
And everybody.
I'm going to move the phone, Rebecca. Hold it away from you here, okay? Okay.
All right, can you still hear me?
I can.
Okay.
It was really loud.
Yeah, now Mel, could you speak in a normal tone to Rebecca to see if she can hear you from over there?
Yeah, testing 1, 2, 3, Rebecca. Testing 1, 2, 3.
Fine, hi, Mel.
Marvelous, marvelous. Okay. Rebecca, let me get you on board here with Mel making sure that I do it correctly. So I want to say to the public and to the committee that Rebecca Stone has contacted me, and I have determined that one of the following factors, in fact there's only one factor, makes the members' physical attendance unreasonably difficult, and that's her geographic distance. Okay? That being the case, we have to make sure that there'll be a quorum, that is a simple majority of members, including the chair, present at the meeting, that I have secured a room in a public building with a town school issued phone with speakerphone capability in accordance with the selectmen's policy, that I've made reasonable efforts to distribute to the remote participant in advance of the meeting copies of documents that may be used during the meeting, that at the start of the meeting I must announce the name of the member participating remotely and the reason he/she is participating remotely. This announcement must be recorded in the minutes. So Rebecca, your name is Rebecca Stone, if I'm not mistaken. Is that correct?
I believe it still is, yes.
Very good, Rebecca. I'm happy to hear that. And that you are participating remotely because you are in New York City, if I'm not mistaken.
That is correct.
Thank you very much. Okay. And the phone is working, and the remote participant is clearly audible to those present at the meeting. Are you all able to hear Rebecca?
Yes.
Very good. And here's a great one. All votes will be taken by roll call vote in this case, in order to make sure that Rebecca can be counted in the vote. Okay. And if there are
I apologize to my committee members for that.
Oh, that's all right.
Well, the committee's small enough so everybody can see how we vote anyway.
And if there are technical difficulties, I will suspend discussion while efforts are made to correct the problem. Lots of luck. We've got Michael Sandman here. He can fix anything. Okay, now,
Or anybody.
now I have to get on a wireless system here. I don't have,
You want me to try to do this while you?
yeah, you know what? Could you send to, you got
Yeah.
Rebecca's motions? Could you send them to Janice? Okay, and just put on top of it Rebecca. So that Janice knows Rebecca's. Okay, I'll tell her.
It's okay, I'll do it. You can take that.
Okay, but I have to tell her that it's coming from you rather than,
I'll tell
you'll tell her, okay. All right, so, I believe that you all received a copy of the minutes of the August 5th meeting, and you also have another copy of those minutes in your package. Would people like a moment to review them?
Yes, please.
Okay.
Let's see.
That is Rebecca, Betsy.
Got it. Okay.
And I've been through all of the routine that I was advised legally I had to
You followed the
go
protocol.
through in
Okay,
order
all right.
to
So we have her
make her a
legitimately
legal
participating.
participant and.
Excellent.
I'm not sure whether you were in the room when we discovered that every vote that we take has to be a roll call vote in order to.
Oh, in order to include her.
Yes,
Okay, all right.
right. So we will do that,
Okay, I guess we will do that.
okay?
Can I correct the first paragraph, latest redistricting results, Ms. Stone and Mr. Waschinsky? I think I was in on that discussion too, so I'd like to be mentioned.
Oh, sure.
Thank you.
We were trying to give any impression that you were doing any work, Ken, so in this case,
You should have
we will.
been
And I actually wasn't there when they did it.
That's true too.
All right, so how about it's actually, to be fair, it was
It was Ken and
It was
Rebecca.
actually Mr. Goldstein.
Well,
not
Mr. Waschinsky, actually, before we updated the committee on the findings of redistricting, Mr. Waschinsky updated the committee on the,
Oh, yeah, that's right.
the
We should
fi-
correct
some
that.
fine details on,
The adjustments that you made
Yeah.
having to do with,
So you,
all right, well, all three of you did it. How's that?
that's fine with me.
that's fine.
It's on video, if anyone ever wants to know what
Right.
really happened, they
Sure.
can find out.
There's one other thing, we had among the various hybrid things that we talked about was the potential to switch the spotlight from Lawrence to Pierce and completely reconstruct the new part of Pierce.
We didn't vote on it.
I know we didn't vote on that. Does that belong in the discussion at all, or?
Well, it could be there, but it's certainly not part of the motions that were passed.
Oh, I agree, absolutely.
No, he was just talking about putting in the minutes, because it was a discussion that we did have.
So,
you can insert
you
it
want to
in.
put it under discussion?
Yeah.
You can just add a sentence.
Yeah, under
Also,
discussion.
also discussed was potentially expanding, renovating Pierce.
Pierce.
That covers it.
Pierce and specifically rather than Lawrence was a discussion, although I don't mind about that. I mean, I just want to get that on the record.
So renovation at Pierce was also, the possibility of renovation at Pierce was also discussed.
That was it.
As he's kindly taking these notes, so I'm giving her plenty of time.
I'm just modifying. I've added Mr. Goldstein and possible renovation at Pierce. Anything else?
Okay, with those changes, do I hear a motion to accept the minutes?
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Is there any other discussion? All those in favor? Aye.
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 All those opposed? Any abstentions?
I abstained.
You're abstaining because you weren't here.
Not
That makes a lot
present.
of sense to me, George. Thank you very much. Okay, great. Okay, the next thing we wanted to do very quickly was to check with everyone to see whether we could hold a meeting on Monday, the 19th, a week from today, at 5:30, which we hope will be over by 7. We will have reviewed remotely the form of the report. We can discuss at that time any changes that people recommend, and we're hopeful at the end of that meeting that we will have a report in place to produce. Everybody can be here?
I can be here. What time?
We
Well,
thought we'd
that's-
do it at 5.
We said 5:30 thinking, we might have a quick meeting and go home, but
Right.
it's, the 5:30 starts have all been because we have very long agendas, so if people would choose not to do 5:30,
Why don't we, at the end of this meeting, revisit
the time,
the time? Let's see how far we get here,
Very good.
and hopefully we'll get far.
Yes.
And maybe
Hopefully
we can
we will
push it
finish.
back a little bit.
Okay. All right. That's good. I had sent, then I'm going on to the third item in the agenda, which is the item that I emailed everybody about, but we can't have a discussion over the email, so I alerted you to the concept, and I just wanted to make sure that you were comfortable with it. That is the creating a small drafting group. That's wonderful. Oh, I do without you.
thank you,
Thank you
Janice.
so much. Okay. And that group would be Lisa, who couldn't be here tonight, and Neil, and Michael, and Rebecca, I believe. Is that correct? And
Volunteers, all.
or as
Right.
Susan calls them from time to time, voluntoles. Right? Yeah. So, great, that's great then, and that, I think, is going to help produce the report much more rapidly. Okay, so now there are two updates that I wanted to share with everyone. One, where's Mel?
Well, he was over there a minute ago. I'm sure he's here. Is he?
One that Mel was going to give us because he and Superintendent Lupini had a discussion with with MSBA. And I wanted Mel to be able to give that report. I got a report from Bill. Mel and I discussed what I heard, and miracle upon miracle, it turned out that what I heard was exactly what Bill heard and told me about was exactly what Mel heard. And so I thought it would be much better if Mel reported it to me rather than me. And then the second thing, I just want to summarize. I gave you the report that Bill Lupini sent to us all, and I simply wanted to report that so everyone would know about it, and I'll do that after Mel shares with us his discussion with MSBA.
Sure, thank you, Mr. Chairman. So we did, as you know, and I think it was distributed this evening, received a letter from MSBA, and that letter expressed some concerns, and one of the concerns we resolved right away is they were looking for a particular document that they had asked certain questions that the town was to respond to, and I think they expected it more promptly, but as it turned out, we did fax them our responses that morning, so that was the first thing we resolved. The second thing was the MSBA expressed some concerns about the committee and our consultant making certain assumptions about MSBA funding. They are very concerned about anybody making judgments on their behalf in terms of whether a project would be funded or not be funded. And as you recall, HMFH did make certain assumptions in that regard. I sort of defended the necessity for us to do that, but they wanted to be very clear that no one can make commitments on their behalf either way. And so I said we understood that, and I think we do understand that the ultimate decision about funding is MSBA's and MSBA's alone. But I did indicate that how we needed to have assumptions and compliance with certain MSBA standards to enhance the chances of funding, for example. But that point was made. The other point was made was that they are obviously frustrated a bit about the pace of our answers and why it is that we keep going back and forth on various issues. And I expressed to them how challenging this process is and how many moving targets and competing interests there are. You have to understand MSBA is a single state agency that deals with a number of different communities and municipalities, and so they have to treat everybody the same, but they are expressed, again, their concern about wanting to get an answer right away as soon as possible and at least make sure we stay on our schedule. They are obviously reading about what's going on here and hearing from some folks directly, and it's creating some anxiety on their behalf, and so we talked about that a bit. And then finally, they talked about the divergence from our existing K through 12 model, which of course they've already funded schools, two schools in the recent past, the Heath and the Runkle, and now have made a commitment for the devotion, and I think indicated that if there is a divergence from the K-8 model, I should say, and the 9 through 12 high school model, that I think there's going to be a lot more discussion about that going forward. And MSBA was clear in their letter that they would reserve the right to reconsider funding issues around devotion and going back and looking at the projects they funded in the past. So that was essentially the discussion.
Right, and just to clarify a couple of things, because there was a report in the tab, they did not say explicitly that they were going to do anything about that funding. They just said that they were going to reconsider. They would have to reconsider.
That's correct. There was no definitive decisions made. The only thing that they have said very clearly is that their approval going forward with devotion is sort of a conditional approval. And at the end of this BSpace and school committee process, that they will then reconsider and give us a final go-ahead.
Mel,
Or not.
do you think that they're warning about changing the K-8 model and reevaluating past projects, and if we were to change the model, do you think that that was a mere formality, that they want to reserve their rights and put us on notice, or do you think it was more of a, well, warning is the first word I use, or a shot across the bow, or something more stern than more formality, a mere formality?
It's hard for me to answer that, Ken. I don't know, honestly.
The letter says, since the Ruckland and Heath schools were also recently completed with assurances as to their enrollment and grade level configurations, MSBA will need to be informed of the BSpace Committee's final determinations in order to assess any cost recovery implications, which suggests that they could come back and say, hey, we paid for those and you're going to use them for something different, give us the money back. And, I would say at the very least, they want to establish that they have that right.
I get that they definitely at least want to establish that they have the right. The
Yeah.
question is,
Yeah, well,
Were
does that mean that they would do it? Who knows?
were they saying that this is how stern were they in tone of voice as they related this information, I suppose?
There were multiple people it was a phone conference, first of all, so we weren't having any body language or any physical interaction. But, so it's hard, it really was hard for me to assess that, but I don't think they send this to everybody, I don't think they, I think it was a specific issue around Brookline, and just putting us on notice that there had better be good reasons, and we have to tie our projects back to the educational formula or educational policy.
And this is speculation on my part, but it occurred to me that that if we were to change our model in that fashion, that they would want to know that the funding, the buildings that they funded could be easily adapted to a new model and would not require substantial additional renovation. That's just speculation on my part, but that would seem to me to be a logical question in their minds.
I tend to agree.
Other questions? Okay, thank you very much, Mel. So each of you have a copy of Dr. Lupini's memo regarding both K through 12 and his preferences. And I should start out by saying that I asked him to do this because I thought it was important that you all know how he felt. And I also wanted to tell you all, if you don't know it, that the reason that he has not been here is that he had a long-term commitment to be with his son to visit schools elsewhere, and dates that were made a long time ago. And he actually would have preferred that we postponed this meeting because he wanted to be here, because he knew that he hadn't been at the last meeting. And I will say that I consulted with Betsy about that, but I thought that we had to proceed, and that was one of the reasons why I asked him for this document, so that everybody would be clear in his own words how he felt. And I will just remind everybody that what he says is he kind of describes the issues, both academic, potential academic offerings and social emotional factors in connection with a 7 through 12 configuration. He says it can be done and probably be done very well. But he also says, as a conclusion, that the K through 8 model has served Brookline very well, and the data will establish that it has served Brookline very well, and therefore he sees no driving reason to change that model at the present time. That's his conclusion. If anybody disagrees with me, but that's his conclusion, please tell me. But I feel that that is, and so I just wanted to announce it publicly. And to the extent that I'm capable of doing it, I'm glad to answer any questions. He and I did have a conversation about it. Okay. That being the case, if there are no more questions, then I think we ought to get to the heart of the matter here and begin to discuss the kinds of issues and votes and preferences that we might have going forward. And I have two sets of quite similar.
Wait. You
Oh,
need to
go
go
ahead.
through this
Oh,
first.
I'm sorry. Go ahead. Right.
So before we have our discussion, let's pull out the options matrix that's been put together. For the first time, we've tried to match some numbers cost-wise with the various options. And I'm just going to walk through this and then open for comment, discussion, and questions. The first page basically tries to give the component parts of various kinds of expansion or classroom additions that we might consider. So, for example, devotion is listed there, and I will say that it's kind of color-coded. It was getting even very confusing for us to follow. Where you see green, the numbers you see are based on calculations that were made by HMFH in their report to us. So if you refer back to their financial numbers, which I assume to be what I'm going to call fully loaded, which is to say, if you look at what HMFH provided us, it will include things like fees and other considerations that are not simple per square foot numbers. But on the case of modulars, I'm not clear that all of that's included. So anything you see in white is probably not a fully loaded cost. And that's just sort of a, caveat, beware. I don't want to be comparing fully loaded costs to not fully loaded costs. However, having said that, we know from the devotion concept study that the ballpark figure for devotion is $90 million. And as we know that it's actually currently scheduled to be a 4.5 section school. It may be that BSpace and or the school committee would like to recommend that it become a full 5 section school. And the dollar amount there is simply reflecting what the concept study provided us, which is a 4.5 section school. The next item is Driscoll School, and apparently, according to Peter Rowe, there may be some existing capacity there, so there could be 3 classrooms at Driscoll without any other than internal adjustments. I don't know exactly what that would be. And then there's Driscoll 2 ways, one with 8 sections added and one with 10 sections added, and my understanding was the 8 could be 8 to 10 and the 10 could be 10 to 12, but for simplicity's sake, you just got one version. Modulars, what you see, just simply for comparison, is 4 classrooms at Heath, 4 at Lawrence. Not clear to me, in fact, it's pretty clear to me that that does not include, and I will say the fully loaded costs that were calculated include common spaces. So if you look at the devotion and Driscoll numbers, they would account for cafeteria, gym, library, and other facilities that would meet MSBA standards. The modular numbers do not, as I understand it. Could be wrong, but that's how I understood it. So what you see there is 2 versions at Driscoll. You see modulars at Heath and Lawrence, and an expansion at Lawrence, again based on the study done by HMFH. Just for comparisons, and because we did talk about additions at other locations, you'll see a number for Baker and New Lincoln, and that's just simply to say roughly what 4 modular classrooms would cost on those locations. Ignoring the sites, because this is basically taking HMFH's form and plugging in different things. The dollar amount listed for a new K through 8 is what they calculated, including common spaces for a new school. It happens that the site they looked at was Baldwin. And then there's a number that is calculated based, it's their calculation on renovation and expansion at the site of the old Lincoln School. They gave us a new high school number for grades 7 through 12. You'll see a 9 through 12 number that's just a mathematical reduction from the from the class configuration from 7 to 12 to 9 to 12. Next is expanding at the Brookline High School. That included three different components. One was the Schlentz Gym, one was Tappan Street classrooms, and, two components. Those are both included here. And then there's another smaller renovation that they proposed that only was to have the Schlentz Gym turned into classrooms. The next number there is exactly the same number as renovating Old Lincoln School for a K through 8. It's just simply to say, if you were to put the high school there, you'd have to improve that facility, and that's what a K through 8 would cost. It may or may not be the same as what it would cost to do a high school expansion. But those are components. If you look in the notes, the green outlined numbers should include common spaces. The white ones do not. And just for your information, these are HMFH's cost per square foot, so you get a sense of comparison. And then if you look at page 2.
Betsy?
Sure, sorry.
I think on the current, on the high school expansion, I think the Schlentz Gym infill, which is noted as student population of 2,200, I think that is also 2,500.
It might be, and we can correct for that. There are probably things that,
Yeah, there are a couple of other small
sure,
things in there.
by all means, catch them and correct them.
The one thing is that a 7 to 12, you wouldn't be building a new school in Lars Anderson for 2,450. You'd have the high school population is projected at 2,500. If you add another 1,250 for...
Actually, this is a whole new school.
No, I
This is not
appreciate
two
that.
schools. This is one school for
No,
everybody.
no, I understand. But even so, it would still be only 50% more than half of the...
I'm giving you their number. It's their number that they put into their report. I didn't mess with it. It's their dollar number for one single high school for grades 7 through 12.
I'm not quarreling with the dollar number.
No.
I'm talking about the population number. I think the
Okay.
population number would be something more like 1,800 and 1,900.
I agree. I believe
See
that's-
why? Because you'd have, instead of having half the high school population would be 1,250, and then the other two
You're adding
grades
the
would be
two
another
grades,
600.
but you're putting, it's not half the school population. It's all of them. It's all of the high.
We're not going to close down Brookline High
Two
School.
7 to 12s.
No, this particular one is a single high school on one site, everybody on one,
For 7 to
Then
12.
it's not
Then it
enough.
would
Then
be
it's
more
not
than
enough.
2,450.
then it might be more than 2,450. That I could believe. It's not
That's-
less
Then
than
you're looking at
2,450.
3,600.
Yeah, 3,600
3,600.
students.
Oh my
And
God.
I don't think we,
Now you're
Alright,
in New
well-
York City territory.
You know, I apologize. All right, let's see what's here. What
4,800.
I'm looking at is a new high school for 7 through 12. And the truth is, maybe this was for half of the
yeah, I think
population.
it should be.
I believe, I thought it
missed
was for
that.
the 100%. And it may very well be that it's for half, in which case we change the population number.
Yeah, that's all
Okay.
I'm suggesting.
Yeah, right.
Should be 18,
So-
1,900, something
All
like
right, yeah, all right, let's call it 1850, just split the difference, that's fine with me.
53.
Right, okay,
It's always suspicious if you don't have 000 in estimates.
Yeah, that's why I said 18.
okay, all right, so, anyway, thank you for catching that.
Betsy, were you using the construction cost, or were you using the chart that HMFH did with
It's
the fully loaded cost?
fully loaded.
contingencies and
all
other
of,
things.
you can't see the colors, but what I've tried to do is show where we've used HMFH's fully loaded costs, which is basically everything except modulars.
Right.
And
No,
that
no,
number,
I-
that number, I'm looking at their spreadsheet right now, and that's the number in their spreadsheet.
Okay, because they had given us, I know, they had given us a bunch of different ways to look at the numbers, and one of them was just the square foot construction cost.
That's
and
not
one
what,
of them-
that's not,
One of
that's,
them included the other one.
that is not this number. This is the one where, I'll tell you what's included. Construction costs, construction contingency, temporary classrooms if needed, fees, other professional services, project contingency, and something called, tell me what this is, F&E with technology, I don't know what F&E is.
Furnishings and equipment.
That's,
Furniture and equipment, right, but they're fully
Furniture,
loaded.
yeah.
It's a fully loaded,
Right,
and
okay, great.
everywhere,
I just wondered which comparison it was. Thank you.
everywhere on this chart where there is a green stripe is fully loaded.
Rebecca, you did me a good favor there, because I was just beginning to wonder if you were still on the phone. I know I don't have to encourage you to chime in. I'm sure you will do that, but it will be helpful if you do, even more helpful than usual if you do, because I want to make sure that we don't lose you and don't know it.
Okay, well, I'll text someone if I get lost.
Okay.
All right, and Rebecca doesn't have this, right? She doesn't have the
Well,
chart.
that
Did
depends.
we emailed it to you, don't you have it?
Yes, no, I have the options. I have the
Okay,
options
all right.
right in front of
So
me.
you can see where the green stuff is, you know that it's
Yes.
HMFH.
Yeah.
All right. Then page 2 is illustrative only examples, but are kind of combinations that we have discussed in one form or another. There are a couple that are green, and that's because they were part of the HMFH report, and there are others that committee members brought up separately, and are merely to let us see a kind of range of comparison. The hybrid options, every one of them has $90 million in it for devotion, all right? So what you're seeing there assumes a $90 million price tag for devotion, plus other components. And the ones that are green are taken straight from HMFH. The yellow ones are totaling up numbers from HMFH. But at least it's kind of a basis for comparison.
Betsy, can I just add that where people are seeing the Lawrence, 4 modulars at Lawrence, that money is already appropriated by town meeting and being spent, because that project is moving forward. So that's not a future $2 million or whatever we're using for the Lawrence modulars, that's a current.
Right. That's correct. And if you look at the number of classrooms, the number of classrooms is 26, because that's what we asked HMFH for. So it was meant, to be consistent. And if you want to go back to the first page, simply taking a classroom, assuming not kindergarten, but maybe not first grade, I'm not clear about that, but certainly 2nd through 8 at 25 students per classroom. If you look at the number of classrooms, you look at the student population, you can see what adding those sections would do to the school student population.
So, for example, in
Yeah.
what you list here is number 4, which is expand 3K to 8 plus a high school. That's exactly the program. That's 999
Right.
in Heath, Driscoll, Lawrence. No modulars, just full standard construction.
Right,
250 million.
right.
Wow.
Heath, Driscoll, Lawrence?
That's
Expansions, it's not modular, it's the,
it's the program that
Program.
HMFH.
That was the HMFH.
that's right.
Right, without any
That's right.
modifications.
Right,
which, we had talked about, we were pressing for modifications on that.
Right. It's just for comparison purposes, these are relative. These are trying to take components and putting them together in ways that were discussed, and using what we were given under our request to the consultants, so you can see for comparison purposes.
So you give me an opportunity, Betsy, to say something that I think we've talked about directly related to that, which is that some of us are concerned that people may feel that these estimates are actually very accurate. And while we think that these estimates are fairly comparable to each other, that is to say, we could tell that one is going to be more expensive than the other, I think we need to caution everybody that these are not necessarily what the costs would be after we got finished examining them and massaging them, and I'm not saying whether they would be higher or lower. I'm just saying that we should not assume from here on in that those would be the costs for these projects.
No, but I think it's fair to say, relatively speaking.
Yes,
you know,
that's precisely my point.
Some are a little more, some are a little less.
Right.
So you can use them for only judging them relative one to the other.
Having the numbers not end in 000
Gives a
implies
wrong-
a degree of
Well-
precision
So we
that doesn't
discussed,
exist.
that was a source of discussion.
I understand.
And I think that Madam Chairman properly said, look, if I'm going to use the numbers that are in the HMFH study, even though they're overly accurate, I better use them. Is that
Well,
is
the
that a
idea
fair-
was if you wanted to go to a common source, if you go back to the study, that's what they provided
understand.
us. So
Yeah.
I understand.
I cannot explain why 689, 184, 807, 689 is not a
That's
number
not
I
right.
can explain.
I don't understand why option number one is more than option number two. It seems option number one is renovate devotion.
No, it's more modulars. It's more classrooms. It's just simply
Right, but
an
that
order of
costs-
magnitude.
But that costs $20,000 more than doing devotion and Driscoll? Or 20 million, I'm 20,000.
Let's keep our zeros right.
$20 million more than doing devotion and Driscoll? Because Driscoll isn't done in option one.
In option one?
I think
Well, it says in
option one was adding
it's hybrid one, yeah. It says,
modulars at 4 locations and expansion at the high school. This is the problem. I didn't have all the detail. I just lifted what they put in their spreadsheet. I can't tell you for sure.
I think we need to look at
But I think
these
it's,
numbers a lot more carefully,
well,
because there's some other things.
Alan and I are very clear that these are not absolute numbers, but I think they are comparable numbers to the extent that if there are 6 or 7 modular classrooms added in one and only 4 in the other one, then there's going to be a difference, because,
I would venture to say, take 2 and 3, where 2 is 177 on here, the other one is 184. Given the fuzziness of the numbers, I would venture to say that in terms of cost estimation,
they're pretty
those are
close.
pretty comparable.
Yeah, right.
And I wouldn't make a decision on 2 because it's cheaper.
Right.
Because the
I
numbers are
think that's
so
fair.
high level that when you start drilling into location specifics and, this,
I just don't see how one is accurate, because you're doing one less total renovation, and it's costing $20 million more.
I think that's a good point.
could you have swapped the numbers?
So could we reconstruct that right now? Is that possible to do with the?
I don't know, I'll see. I think that one's just one that they provided us. But, hold on, let me see what I
Was it?
That is correct, because the project cost that they provided us for the 4 plus high school
Yeah.
is $108,728,925, and you added $90 million to that.
Yeah, that's right. That's where you get the number. I mean, I did some pretty dumb math here, guys. I did not try to do anything complicated or
So,
sophisticated.
so I think there may just be something missing from your description of the hybrid option
That,
number one.
that may be, it's not very complete, but I.
I think it
I'm
needs to say
assuming-
that you're doing, that it's not modular at Driscoll, it's renovate, devotion, and Driscoll.
It's really dumb. Something doesn't happen.
Because that's, HMFH's 4+1
Hang on, I
includes,
can tell you what's in those numbers.
Includes
Just give me
Driscoll.
a sec. No, well, that's actually, I took that one as is. I have no idea what went into that one. But I can tell you that number 2 is made up of 90 90 for devotion, plus the larger number at Driscoll, which is 19 million, plus,
So high level. Well, they are. If you just, when you see that spread, hopefully
it's the $65 million number for the high school renovation, which is right out of HMFH.
Right.
And the modular numbers are just those, they are 4 times 399. 399,000 being one modular classroom. They're all just simple math. So I am perfectly willing for people to discuss the actual figures in the spreadsheet, but it seems to me it's more important to figure out whether or not we are interested in either pursuing combinatorial possibilities, and if so, what they are.
Michael, did you have a question?
What
Yeah.
possibilities?
combinatorial, come on.
Combinations.
Oh, thank you.
Sorry.
Michael?
Such a big word.
Well, I would say there are two things that I would say. One is there's one of the things that you listed is perfectly fine to have listed, but is to expand K-8 and have 2 high schools. And I think that 9 to 12, and I don't know that that was really discussed very much on the table. It also comes out to be the largest single cost, and I think that expanding 4 K-8s plus 2 high schools.
Just shows you how big a number you get,
Yeah.
that's all.
Yeah, okay, all right, so.
Frankly, it's
we'll
not
leave
a
that aside.
recommendation, this
Right.
is a
Right.
list of things that are combinations, which can be recombined in many ways.
Right.
They are mostly things that got some discussion.
So, well, I want to go back
And
to
orders
something.
of magnitude is really the bottom line.
Fair enough.
Are
I
you
want-
talking 100 million, 200 million, 300 million? That's
Right,
what
and, you
we're
know,
doing.
as Everett Dirksen said, $1 billion here, $1 billion
Yeah,
there.
right,
you can
right.
get
Mounts
there.
up after a
Mounts
while.
up, yeah. So, and actually, that's the point that I want to make, which is that I don't really think we're going to make a decision based on cost. And while it's useful to have the general dimensions,
Yes.
we're going to make a decision based on preference and feasibility. And we probably ought to focus on that, as useful as it is to have the cost, because you then have to go back to the community and say, okay, this is what we want you to pay. And we have to have some idea of what that is. and Some things do cost.
It's simply
more.
that, up until now, we've not really matched the cost with some of the different combinations we've talked about.
Yeah.
And some of the combinations we talked about are not the same that were studied, and therefore, this was an attempt just to sort of put them together. It's not a recommendation, it's examples.
Right. The other thing is, I don't know what the possibilities are for going back to HMFH with some specific questions. For example, we had a discussion about Pierce, and I think it was Rebecca who brought the point up that it might make more sense because it would be very tough to shoehorn in everything that they have talked about here into Lawrence, that it might be better to completely rebuild the new part of Pierce. And there's a cost of taking something down and, and so on and so forth, but just the same, that might be something that it would be useful to see whether it fits into the same box of
The
more
issue
or less
with
$200 million.
Pierce, leaving aside cost, the issue with Pierce is timetable.
Yeah, no, I respect the point that it then causes other problems.
So we're going to address that. I think, actually, we're going to address everything that you've said. We're going to propose some motions that take into consideration not only generally what you've said, that is to say, we're not going to look just at cost or even mostly at cost. Number one, we're going to try and see what's feasible and what makes sense, number one. And number two, we are going to include in the suggestions the issue of Pierce, identifying it, at least for now, as possibly a longer-term option. Whether that's true or not, I'm not sure.
Okay, good.
And some of the questions that may come up may be questions which we're going to ask the school committee to address rather than us. Is that fair?
Fine.
I have another question.
Please.
You've got the annual cost of lease space for early ed pre-K on here. How many do we actually lease? It says there's a 10 figure and a 20 figure, 10 class, 10 class.
It's how many rooms. In other words, if it's 10 classrooms or 20 classrooms.
What I'm interested in is what does $1 million a year cost
Get you
get us
20
for,
classrooms.
get us in terms of, is that $50 million worth of school construction or $100 million? Mike, you did some numbers on this. Because
Okay.
that's a pretty important,
Sure.
Here we go
we
again.
may not be able to cover B, but it'd be interesting to understand that spending $1 million a year, exactly how much steps are.
Right.
Oh,
To some extent, the difficulty on this one, I totally agree with you, Philip, about asking the question, but there are two ways of thinking about it. One is, will this population continue endlessly and forever? And what is appropriate in terms of capital investment? Or is it wiser, and I'm not answering this question, I'm posing it. If you build, and I'm gonna say there's two parts to this, all right? Preschool is not a mandate. We're very lucky in this town that we provide it, but it's certainly not necessarily something that you could go to the voters and say, let's go out and build 20 preschool classrooms, because it's not part of our obligation as a public school system.
It is for special needs students.
For special needs students, but we do not take on 100% of pre-kindergarten as part of our responsibility.
Well, just to
So-
follow up with, I'm sorry.
Just trying to say it's more complicated, Philip. So if we're talking about a capital investment for pre-K, you need to be thinking about all of the variables, that's all.
That's great. I appreciate that. I'm just still wondering, what does that represent? Because we had talked about, part of our charge was to try to accommodate BEEP.
Yeah, right, and I think we've said things like early education centers sound very appealing, we just don't know what they would be and where.
Although we tried
just-
to.
I mean, renting is obviously cheaper than, than building by, if that, by some very significant margin, because the cost of building, if it's $35 million to build a new K through 8, $33 million more or less, you get about 30 classrooms. You're talking about $1 million per classroom as opposed to renting at, what are we renting at there?
Well, $1.5 million a year.
We're renting at 1/20th of that.
Well, you said 30 classrooms, that would be 10 plus 20 is 30 is $1.5 million a year.
That's right.
That might service that debt pretty nicely, whether or not we could finance it or not, or get it sold to the voters.
Yeah, most assuredly, given the rates that we're expecting to pay, 5% of construction costs will service, it's at least an equal trade, and it's
Right.
no worse.
Right, okay, that's my point.
building, yeah.
But seeing that number doesn't tell the
Right.
whole story.
Yeah, and of course, the other thing is, where could you find the additional classrooms to rent?
That's-
That's another matter.
We build them at, oh, never mind.
Yeah.
Woburn, I think we decided.
Woburn, yeah, that we talked about that, right?
So just a couple of additional comments. One is that the reason it's 10 and then 20 is I think we're leasing 10 the first year. And then the second year, we're leasing another 10 for a total of 20. And the leases, as I understand it, have an option to renew at the end of 5 years. At the end of 5 years. And one advantage to that is that if we don't want, if we don't want to use the space going forward, then we have the flexibility not to use that, which gives us some flexibility on the downside in terms of population, student population. The other thing I just wanted to add to what Betsy said is that, and what Rebecca said, is that while we do have an obligation for students with special education needs, from an effective education point of view, if I understand it correctly, it doesn't make sense to have pre-K classrooms that are all special education kids. And if you mix, let's say, at least a 50-50, and Rebecca, tell me if I'm wrong about this, so that you have the same number of regular education kids as special education kids, it's good for both of those students.
Right, I mean, preferred system is to have fully integrated special education. I wasn't disputing that. I was just simply saying it's more complicated, that's all.
Very little about this has not been.
That is true, that is true.
It's about 6:30, and we could take a 15-minute break now to have something to eat, if people would like, and then come back and begin to address the motions.
Give you time to think about things.
Ellen, will you call me back when you guys come back into the room?
I'll certainly give it my serious consideration, Rebecca.
And he's not going to read out the whole
I
protocol.
was going to ask you if you had to find out
Second
what her
time.
mother's maiden name was again, yeah?
Should we vote on it?
Okay?
Okay.
And I'm sorry that I can't send a pizza through the wire.
No, you're not sorry at all. She's not sorry she
I'm
can't get it.
not that sorry, we were at Zabar's earlier today.
Oh, thanks a lot, Rebecca. Okay. We'll call you back. You can count on it. Thanks.
Thank you.
Right, bye. Okay.
I think for the last meeting, we need to have, not for us.
I agree with you. No, those are my notes.
All right, Aaron.
We're meeting on the 19th, our last meeting. I think we should have a couple of kegs of beer for all the people here.
Well, except for the fact that the school committee would have to approve, you would then the select board would have to approve alcohol to be served in those.
Non-alcoholic. Oh, they don't do that. They're so grudgy, you know, it's because they haven't had dinner.
Hey, Brock with the Globe, how are you? Hey, Brock. See if it's possible for me to get the spreadsheet of the numbers you guys are completely relaxed. I mean, just a copy of like the totals, that would be really helpful.
I think so. I'd have to ask the chairman of the committee, but
Oh, okay.
as far as I'm concerned, you can get them. I'll make sure there's an extra copy of it.
this and I'll try that too. Really?
What's the second one?
You have the right plug?
I didn't bring any devices,
Let me,
so I don't know.
That the so-called small ball.
I think we should hand out,
Packets of documents there, I just want to take care.
I have a laptop. That-
Well, somebody is volunteering to make photocopies of things, and I thought, okay.
She doesn't have the right.
Documents that we're going to be working on,
I've got a computer.
motions on the matrix.
I have a thumb
I
drive.
know, we have to fix it. Yeah, right, I have to fix it. It was something not printed where I could find it.
In my, you don't have to comment, but in my hard copies. Small ball.
Neil, you plug yourself in. I will
The superintendent. He was in the school. Sammy's in his no place to put it.
Amazing technology.
As I said, you don't have to comment, that's my.
No, we haven't had that.
Yeah.
But what I wanted to say to you is that it would be helpful for me to review this process. I'm not sure that I understand what was wrong with it, but what I do understand.
You can just email it.
Well, certainly having,
Neil, you can be a guest, you know.
reasonably
Yeah, this, this,
up front,
Oh, all right, fine.
all of the
We'll
options.
just plug it in, I'll get it.
Absolutely, we never were gonna always crack about Anne Marie and Frank and so on. And it would have been way shorter, and we would have instead been focused on, okay, which of the various hybrids makes the most sense?
Alan,
Yeah.
here. Did you send me Rebecca's version electronically? No. All right, well, I've got, do you have it electronically?
this mine.
I do.
We want to project it.
Yeah, but he needs to use his thumb drive because I can't find how to get on the.
No, I've got a thumb drive. I need it, I'm gonna put one here and you're gonna do it, we're gonna give them to Neil.
Okay. That I can do with a thumb drive.
All right, I'll give it to you in a sec.
Ah, there you are.
Okay, I've got it here. So let's throw this away, I'm gonna come back.
Yeah, I'm trying to make sure I've got the right one. This is driving me nuts.
I have yours too. I have yours, Betsy. You want to put, you need to put
Well,
both of them on.
wait a minute, because what I'm trying to find is the final version.
No, I did.
For some reason, well, there it is. Ah,
I am, but it's not because I have it.
there it is, I got it.
We have a
No, I'm not. I don't.
I was about to write it in, but I'm doing this
I
instead.
understand, I apologize, I didn't mean to stop you, I just wanted to know.
It was in long series. Was?
And I appreciate that.
It was? And more, and more.
It's true.
And more.
Alan, this is one version, but we still have to get Alan's. You can download that one and we'll get Alan's.
Anybody have one?
We should have pitchforks. Next meeting, I'm coming with a pitchfork and a torch. Let's go. Ah, good, he's gonna put the, he's putting this stuff on the screen. Good. That's very, very important.
Where is the, I'm
Oh,
looking,
you have to find it.
well, I'm looking for it on my page, and I can't,
You didn't send it to me, so I don't have it.
no, I have the document on my computer. What I don't find find is this in
Oh,
my.
it
Can you
should
see
come
it?
up as unnamed.
Right.
It's a funny little, huh. Well, I will admit, I don't know where it's hiding. Let's see, let's take it out. What, get rid of your document.
Well, that's your document.
Oh,
I
okay.
don't want to get rid of it so quickly, but I can.
Well, all right, just hide it, and then let's take this out. Let's put it back in properly. And now watch the screen. Watch the screen, see what happens. I mean, you watch the screen and see what pops up.
Okay, it's definitely.
Yeah, it's there. Somewhere over, I mean, I saw something over in there.
Oh, here it is.
Yeah.
Michael, why are you on So it's under there, but I could have sent me under there.
Okay.
I may be old, but I
Now,
ain't dead.
see, what I do is, with your document,
Copy it into that thing.
just like that.
Yeah, you just grab it and drop it in.
And now I have minutes, motions,
Well, actually, isn't my turn?
study.
Well, I don't know, what else is in the thumb drive?
Where's yours?
I don't know what.
It used to be
deal
Park
I
Plaza,
have.
now it's, our company was acquired, so it's North Station.
Did you send it
Because
to me
sometimes
Tuesday?
it's D and I have to stop at the station.
Tuesday? No, I don't think
No,
so.
no, okay, so this
But I
is,
used to take the T just to Arlington.
Yeah, that's a lot easier, yeah, a lot faster.
You're looking for
looking for
Rebecca's, not
Rebecca's, right.
mine. Rebecca's.
is this Rebecca's?
We're
If it says finding, it is.
Finding,
Yeah, those
yes.
are Rebecca's.
All right, so I've got it.
All right.
years ago, something like that, $29 a foot, and it's now like $1.50.
I'm not surprised, actually.
Okay.
Kendall was going bananas.
I know, and
We're being
you-
told
still
that we can go
blinking.
down.
That's okay. Now, you
Okay,
have to
now-
eject it by taking that icon and
yeah,
putting it in there.
especially if you're on the lower.
Can do that.
You have to find the thumb drive icon and then just move
As
it
a
to
matter
the
of fact, you
trash.
can probably sublet the space and make
Allow you to take it
Well,
out.
we've actually
Another
accepted
way
the
to do it, but
landlord.
I'll do it your way.
Oh, well, you've got another way, fine. You can hit eject, but it needs to go, it needs to be ejected.
So here,
We'll move out.
It really depends how your lease is written.
They have right of
Wait a
they
minute,
have,
don't do it while it's blinking.
right. Okay.
Okay, now you can give it to me. No, wait, I'm gonna put something else.
It's interesting that Kendall and Innovation District, well, Back Bay's done, so Back Bay's fine too. But the financial district,
I need to get a copy for myself.
the bargain, the price point place, ironically.
we'd love to stay, like to stay in Cambridge. We don't want to go to Alewife. Alewife is Alewife is like.
Why Cambridge? Do you pull a lot of people out of the,
Notes that you made on yours?
But it's a great.
Well, you made notes on it.
Well, that's all right.
Cambridge. Oh, I always joke, I go the further away I go from Cambridge, the smarter people think I am. So I go to,
I used to,
Singapore and people say, oh, Cambridge.
some people used to think I was smart. I'm spending too much time around here. They know around here. It's interesting though, Michael, if you do travel, you do realize certain level of sports generally
Well, hey, Brookline has, Brookline zip code has more, the highest percentage of college graduates. Higher than Cambridge. 2 zip codes,
I heard that.
5 or 4 6.
I heard that. All right, I heard higher education, but it's all the same, whichever, whatever they're measuring.
Mr. Chairman?
Madam, here we are. We're getting organized again. And I wanted to make sure that I knew how to get you. And
And here I am.
yeah, can you hear me okay? Okay, they're fiddling around with the loudspeaker, and I'm coming out over there too, so I'm not sure what's happening right now. Oh, I see. Okay, so hang in there for just a minute, Rebecca.
All right.
Can we turn this off?
I'm gonna turn the sound down, and that way when they show at home that, everybody else can see it back there. Okay?
Or you could put the ball game on. Or you could put the ball game on, just for.
Somewhat. Oh, yeah.
What's it good? Think about what's it for? I went to California this week, this past week. And Dodgers Rays game. So I just got behind the
Oh, that was so much fun. Are you a Dodgers fan or just to see them?
No, I see the Rays because the Rays, Rays lost 3 in a row to the Dodgers. Harlan, the Red Sox lost 3. Three. Kansas City.
Yeah, I don't know about that.
My mother's family came.
Okay, so for the public, while we're waiting, if I could just say, I had a request for the numbers, which I understand it would be much better if we had been able to project for you, because then you would have been able to follow the conversation better, and I apologize for that. But we're unlikely to discuss them again tonight. So there was an offer for somebody to go out and actually reproduce them, but when we found out that, or they found out that we really weren't going to be intensely examining them any further, people decided that it wasn't necessary to go out and distribute it, and they, of course, will be up on the website shortly.
There they are.
Yes, well, that's so everybody gets to see them.
The motions, however, that we're going to make are going to be put up for you. We have 2 sets of them, and we'll have to discuss them.
Okay. By the way, on the top is Rebecca's, on the bottom is Betsy's.
Right, so we have 2 sets.
Let's be clear. These are motions that were drafted in order to give us a starting place, and I don't mind being considered author, but it was with consultation. It's not Betsy's motions, and I don't think they're Rebecca's motions. They are different
Thank you for that
approaches to give the committee a place to start in going through what will be I hope, a thoughtful process whereby at the end, we will have a set of recommendations that can go into our report.
I'll just add that the basic part of both of the suggestions are the same. Some of the wording is different, but there's not really a lot of substantive difference in the meaning. So maybe what I would ask the committee to do was to just take a look at both of the, is one on the top and one on the bottom? Fantastic. To see the first and basic motion.
Well, these 2 are exactly the same.
Okay.
So therefore, it is appropriate, having seen them, for members to make comments
Or amend.
or amendments or whatever.
Or the other option is if you'd like to go through them all first,
Yeah, maybe we should.
just once, so that you know what the whole thing is, and then go back. Is there a preference, one over the other?
Can I just make a comment on this first
Sure.
one?
Sure.
Do we, this is more just a matter of form, but do we want to add any more editorial support than just the motion? I mean, it occurs to me that we could say more than that. I suppose the report is going to say a
Yes.
little more than that.
Right.
But Having said that, there are places, and I've read through the motions already, where
Okay.
there's a little bit more editorial comment made, and this has a little less editorial comment made.
So, Alan, I find myself at a bit of a loss for my own fault, because I was on vacation, but
That's not your fault.
I think it's important to sort of understand conceptually what we're trying to do here via these motions, which have many points to them. And if someone could explain to me conceptually, broadly, what decision has been made that are shaping these two motions, that would be very helpful.
In the minutes from the last meeting, if you go to the back page, you'll see a summary of votes that the committee took already that lays the groundwork for this.
So the idea is expansion of existing schools.
Yeah.
Right. The idea is the expansion of the existing high school.
Well, that's certainly up for discussion, yes.
But that's what's reflected in these motions, right?
Yeah.
Okay. And the idea is to reuse Old Lincoln as necessary for implementation of this program, but not to put a school there permanently.
I don't think that's in the motions. We did say last week that it would only be as a last resort if all else failed.
That's not what George is asking. You
Well-
want to use the term swing space because that makes it clearer, I think.
I guess this type
The assumption is it will be in use, George, if that is your question.
The assumption in these motions would be that Old Lincoln would be used as a means to implement a very extensive capital program.
Yes.
That's fair.
Okay. All right, that is helpful.
And
But I think,
that it will also get some improvements along the way, that it's not just going to sit there as is. And
And
it's already scheduled for, as you're aware.
But that would be shaped by its
Sure.
uses over
Sure,
time.
yeah, right.
And the motions will mention the possibility that it might be used for some of the programs at the high school, although that's certainly not a recommendation we want to make. That's kind of a finding that we'd like to share with the school committee.
okay, I think George is asking a great question, kind of step back a little bit and just talk about the approach of the motions. So the first part is a declaration that we agree to stay with K-12, K-8. And then the second motion talks about, to do that, we're recommending expansion in place. And then the next part talks about some guidelines or findings on how to implement expand in place. And then it goes on to talking about the high school. And then it talks about the Lincoln School. And then potentially talking about a second high school. Now, this is a starting point. It's easier to work from a starting point than to be drafting as a committee. So if anyone if anyone disagrees and wants to go with a different model, 7 to 12, you would make a motion to amend. So that's the approach.
And if I could just add one thing. Also, we discussed the extent to which we should make or appear to be making directives to the school committee, and as opposed to the extent to which we can offer some of the things that we've found or that we think might be a good idea to research further.
I'm a little bit confused because the committee's job is to make recommendations to the school committee. What authority would we have to say to the school committee, do this? That's not
Correct.
the job.
And the language of these motions recognizes that.
Okay.
And I think in fairness, the goal ought to be for the school committee to get a clear enough sense of what the recommendations entail. The school committee should not have to revisit all of the work that's been done by BSpace. So There is, I will say, in my mind, a little distinction between a finding and the other language, because in some cases, at least in one example, we did not find it. And I think we have to be careful about that. So we have to think about how we go forward. But to the extent that the committee feels that it has enough information to give direction to the school committee, who will then take this and apply its own deliberations. Ultimately, the school committee is going to be giving what I'm going to call a semifinal recommendation, because an override study committee will be reviewing everything and may come to some different conclusions. But this is a very complicated process. And while you were away, George, we called it a kind of sausage machine, which we're trying to do transparently, all right? It's messy, complicated, and transparent.
But, if I may?
Please.
Ellen, I think both George and Neil are saying the right thing, which is that this set of motions and recommendations comes off of the discussion last week, and the further consideration in particular of Dr. Lucchini's statement about the 7 to 12, that what we have here is essentially what we ended up with at the last meeting was two major potential recommendations for moving forward, both of which could work, and that the motions reflect the sense of the committee, and certainly underscored by what Bill said in his statement, that while both could work, that one of them is far better for Brookline overall, in our view, than the other one, and should be moved forward with, because there are many different ways that the school committee could look at it and achieve it, given what we found in the BSpace process. So the motions reflect both the priority of retaining K through 8 that was well expressed, that is in our view, if the committee decides to agree with this, the best way forward for this process, and that because of the different options that were presented to us about the build in place, that there seem to be many different ways the school committee could opt to move forward, and what we're setting up is a set of, is the information that we have about the cost of those, the challenges and opportunities presented by each of the expansion models, so that the schools can put together the best option and present that to the town. That's fair?
Yes. And the only thing I'll add is, and you'll see it on the, we did go back to look at the, in the analysis that we did with Dr. Tsao, we set up 4 must criteria.
Neil, why don't you put them up, just so that everybody can see and be reminded, because they're embedded. So presumably, every recommendation that the committee makes must meet those criteria.
And certainly, we're recommending those criteria to the school committee as part of the document that we will create. Okay? Okay.
Ken, do you want to continue with your first thought?
Well, my first thought is actually well illustrated by the second motion, where it's not just where BSpace Committee recommends a strategic expansion. It goes on to say why it recommends, and it cites those.
So you want to add some of that?
We could
first?
do that in
Yeah.
the first one, or we could make a decision not to. I'm just laying it out there. I mean, there's a lot that
You
could
find
be.
that one is a little terse, is that what you're saying?
I'm not saying that it is or it isn't. I'm just saying there's a lot that could be said to support it. You could talk about, basically what Mr. Mr. Lupini said that the 7-12 model has not been shown to be an educational advantage. You could say that the committee feels that there are sufficient alternatives in our existing schools to accomplish what we need to accomplish. You could say that we appreciate that maintaining the existing model might cost a bit more and might also create management and construction management problems. But I understand that'll all be in the report. It's just in the second motion, you did provide some editorial, and I'm underscoring that you didn't in the first motion.
Okay, so you hit one nail on the head for me, which is that virtually everything that you've talked about and more will be in the report. So I think that there is an argument to be made that that the motions that we make should be as simple as possible and rely on the report for the background leading up to this.
Which surely will be explained. I have great confidence and faith that the report itself will expand in ways that would satisfy your question.
I accept that.
Are there other,
Rebecca, you want to tell him for sure?
Oh, the report will be perfect.
Okay. All right, now he's reassured.
okay, so, Ken, do you want to, do you want to?
No, I think we'll stick with that.
And I actually agree with Chairman Morse's suggestion that we might walk through all of them and then come back and revisit. It might make it easier. We sort of see it all together and then look at the component parts. It's complicated. So, the first motion before us, and I believe it's the same in both iterations here, is that the BSpace Committee recommends retention of the K-8 neighborhood school model that has served Brookline so well for so long. And then it talks, the next component would be talking about expansion options. And I think both of the next have the same language, so I'm just going to read it out once. Move that the BSpace Committee recommends a strategic expansion of a number of existing neighborhood schools, quote, expand in place, to meet the challenges of the increased school enrollment at the elementary school level. BSpace came to this conclusion considering, and I would say among others, but these are the criteria that are highlighted in yellow that we've talked about, meeting or exceeding current educational program and must maintain Brookline's reputation for educational excellence, the probability of successful approval by the Brookline community that will in the end mean a vote of town meeting and an override vote, must have a site available, that is to say, without environmental, legislative ownership or other legal risks within the time frame, and then finally, meet the enrollment need for 600 students in K-8 by 2017 and 600 high school students by 2022. And I think everything is identical up to that point. Now we begin to have a little variation here. So you want to look at the two, yep.
Here's an issue with that last criteria. I'm not sure anything we have discussed can achieve 600 additional classroom seats by 2017 at the elementary level.
Well, that's a reasonable thing to say, but you know what? We all voted on that, and unless there is, we're going to revisit everything. You can put an asterisk.
To the
Yeah.
school committee.
Yep.
It's not
Yep.
altogether clear in 4 years we can deliver
You may very well be right.
26 classrooms.
You may very well be right. But I don't think it's something we can, let me put it to you this way. It's got to be a goal,
It is a goal.
because those
absolutely.
kids all need a classroom.
That is true.
And therefore, it's part of our goal, whether we succeed. We're
Right.
going to have to see.
Michael?
But there is, we should be, both in the report and in discussing this with the community as a whole, we should be making it clear, particularly because of the way we're proceeding here, the way we're going to add to individual buildings rather than build a whole new building. That process is going to take longer than it would if we built a building from scratch, or took old Lincoln and rehabbed it from scratch. So as a practical matter, it's probably going to take, we'll probably do perhaps 2 schools for a period of time, and then 2 more schools for a period of time. There may be a need to increase class size for some period of time in the school system as a whole. I'm not equipped to provide any detail around that, but I think that we should be making it clear what the timeline consequences are of doing it this way, and say that this is the best way to do it despite the timeline consequences.
And to be absolutely clear, if you look at the devotion project, it takes just as long to do a single project.
Yeah, from scratch, absolutely. It's 4 years to do the planning and all, the architecture.
So I'm not clear that that's such a major distinction.
Yeah.
It's going to be messy and more complicated, as Philip, and I'm sure George would say, in terms of project management. That's for sure.
And also, in terms of swing space and manage, just a whole set of things. I mean, that 2017 gives me pause as well. A lot of pause.
It's a terrific goal, and it should remain our goal. But I just want everyone on this committee and the public to understand that's a stretch.
Sure.
Fair enough.
I think we understand that.
Okay.
But that should absolutely, I agree completely with Michael and George and whoever else. They have just commented that I didn't recognize.
Philip.
That's exactly the kind of thing that the report should capture, and will do so.
Exactly.
No, you take over reading. I'm writing.
Okay, let's move then to the next, so these all have to do with expand in place, and it reads, moved, although a July 2013 feasibility study by HMFH Architects provides information to determine a direction to expand school capacity, more information and study is needed to determine the exact configuration of the Expand in Place program. BSpace recommends the following guidelines as a starting point. And the other version of that just trying to take a look at the determine.
Could we, what if we did that side by side?
Say again, Michael?
Neil, could you arrange
Make
those
them
side by
side by
side and see
side?
if it's still legible?
Might not be. But I'm going to address in part the, what I'm going to call version 2, which is.
2 is on top or on the bottom?
Yeah. Version 2 is,
BD is the one on the bottom.
yeah,
RS is the
all
one
right.
on top.
Let's talk about RS on top. My comment, sorry.
Sorry.
So
Okay.
we're going to comment as we go here? and
Well,
not-
we were going to read through them before commenting, so let's try to read through them all.
So I've
huh?
been-
I
I've
mean,
been
the
holding
idea was to
comments.
get the whole picture and then come back and look at them. Just get a sense of the fact that there are subtle differences, but at least you would hear them all.
Sorry about that. There we go.
That's why I'm sitting on committees like this.
So, do you want me to read, for example, number 1 on one of them, and then
Yeah, I
indicate
think you.
what's the difference?
Yeah, right, and point out what's the difference.
Okay. one number at a time. Okay. Why don't we do this? Why don't I read the bottom version all the way down and then go back to the other version and talk about the differences? Or would you like to compare the differences as we go?
That sounds good, Alan. Why don't you read all the way through and then go back?
Okay, so let me read what's up there then. In close consultation with the MSBA, discuss the possibility of increasing the size of the Devotion School project to the maximum extent that the site project feasibility, cost, including MSBA involvement, and pedagogical considerations allow. And number,
Does that mean we want to maximize the size of Devotion?
Yes.
Okay, can we say that?
Sure. But let's,
That's-
wait, we'll come back. Hold that thought.
I'm not allowed, okay, sorry.
You
yeah,
hold the
no,
thought.
but write it down, George.
Yeah, make a note.
Because we're encouraging contributions, not discouraging them. 2, focus on renovating and expanding the Driscoll School to the maximum extent that the site, project, feasibility, cost, and pedagogical considerations allow. The specifications for the expansion should be designed for eligibility for MSBA reimbursement to the extent possible.
Having said that, I would like to make it very clear, because MSBA made it very clear to us, that we cannot make any plans that we will in fact be eligible for MSBA reimbursement. There are 2 good reasons for doing this. One is simply that their space standards are being applied across the Commonwealth, and therefore are good standards for us to use, and they will meet all of the appropriate requirements. In particular, it means that any project that meets those standards would also have sufficient common spaces. And to put it in a different way, it means enough cafeteria space so that you don't have 12 seatings for lunch, or kids having lunch at 10 a.m. It also means that in the end, should the project be accepted, and MSBA has the authority to accept a project or not, then it would presumably have been designed in such a way as to be eligible for funding.
Okay, number 3, consider adding modular classrooms in the rear parking lot at the new Lincoln School. Number 4, consider expansion at the Lawrence School in addition to modulars currently being planned. Number 5, consider relocating one or more district-wide programs to Heath, while expansion at the Heath School would trigger undesirable redistricting. It could contribute to the district-wide capacity. Number 6, expand in place could also include the notion of early childhood education centers located throughout town, in existing schools, or additional locations as an interim step to meet enrollment needs. This would need to be further studied by the school committee. Number 7, consider possible future renovation and expansion at the Pierce School. This option cannot meet the 2017 deadline, but could be implemented as part of a longer-term plan.
Page down, Neil? Isn't it?
Did I finish the,
I think, oh, there's another one, I'm sorry.
yeah,
It's the second part of
Okay, sorry
page
about
2.
that. Hang on, I'll
you
get
had it up there a minute
Yeah,
ago.
yeah,
Yeah.
I'll get it.
That's all right. You're doing a great job, Neil. There you go.
Oh, that's the wrong one. Let's start from scratch.
I love technology.
I think you've got it. Okay, then There are several additional motions. Moved that the BSpace Committee recommends the continuation of its one high school tradition and that Brookline High School be expanded to accommodate the anticipated capacity of 2,500 students by 2022. The particular option for expansion should be determined for additional study, after additional study, should include, one, consideration of whether to expand the high school campus to the old Lincoln School, and two, a further examination of how scheduling efficiencies could be used to reduce the size of a physical addition. Then the second, moved that the BSpace Committee recommends that the old Lincoln School be part of the capacity solution as interim or swing space to be used while the permanent portion of the capacity solution is being built and/or as part of the high school expansion solution on an interim or permanent basis. And then a third, moved that the BSpace Committee recommends that a second high school be considered only if it can be equitable for all students townwide, and that the site, projected feasibility, cost, including MSBA involvement, and pedagogical considerations support such a solution. So that's the sum substance of that document. And I'll go back to the other document. If you, do people want to take some notes on that first, or anything else? George?
I guess I mean, are you like looking for us to take sections from one and sections from the other, or the whole thing in toto? What do you, I'm confused why
I
we
think
have two drafts.
we have two drafts because two drafts came forward, each of them more or less the same, but with some differences. And we wanted you to know about both of them. We didn't think that we should make a unilateral decision. And so what I was going to do now is to go back and see if I can point out the differences between what I've just read and the second draft.
Here's the second one.
So in this one, the first, the additional motions on expand in place says, move that the BSpace Committee recommends to the school committee a review of the July 13 feasibility study by HMFH architects, that's all the same, to determine the best configuration of and direction for expanding school capacity at existing schools with the following findings as guidance. The other one said guidelines, and this one talks about findings, and I'll read the findings. Finding: increase the size of the devotion school project to the maximum extent that the site project feasibility cost, including continued MSBA partnership and pedagogical considerations allow, may help with the success of the expand in place approach. Finding: expanding the Driscoll School to the maximum extent that the site project feasibility cost, including potential MSBA partnership and pedagogical considerations allow, may help with the success of the expand in place approach. Finding.
Okay, now I'm going to stop you for a minute because
Okay.
that is not a finding.
Okay.
Which one? Two or
Three. Just
Oh.
isn't a finding. In fact, they said not. HMFH said, did not recommend classrooms added in the parking lot at the New Lincoln School. So,
Okay, Madam Chairman, I haven't read that yet.
I'm just pointing out it's not a finding. That's
Okay. So I will read it. Finding, if necessary for expansion, classrooms can be added to the rear parking lot at the New Lincoln School. Okay, now we did, in yours, we did mention,
Yeah, I know. It's
same
just,
issue.
I'm simply pointing out the difficulty of using the
Right.
word finding. That's all.
right. So, and it's true, that was not a finding in the HMFH study, which I think is your point. And so maybe there we might change the finding to something like consider. Okay, the next one, finding Expansion at the Lawrence School, in addition to the modular additions currently planned, may have local traffic impact and other open space impact that should be further studied.
With all due respect, that's not a finding of the report either.
Correct. That's correct.
We didn't study.
That's right. So I think what we're saying is you have to be very careful about using finding.
Right. I don't think, we don't have a disagreement about that.
That was, just.
Go ahead, Rebecca, speak up.
That was based on the conversation at the last meeting. Michael suggested that he had spoken to Todd Corain.
Oh, that's correct, yeah, I have, yeah.
Right?
but-
And
right.
so
Finding.
these findings are not all related to the HMFH report. They are related to the whole scope of conversation and discussion that happened at the BSpace committee.
And with all, Rebecca, what I'm trying to say,
Committee doesn't
it's misleading to say finding when we're referring to the report as our source. That's what the first motion says, the motion above this says.
Yeah, I think there's good reason to make the comment, but I
Right.
agree, it doesn't.
Right, I think it's an easy, there's an easy solution
fix
to
it.
it.
We
It's
can
a,
fix it.
it's a good issue.
Yep.
And it may not be a finding, okay? So 5, finding, understanding that many considerations go into the placement of district-wide programs. Expand in place may benefit from relocation or one or more district-wide programs. There, instead of alluding directly to Heath and I think Baker in the first one, this becomes a separate subject. It just points out that the idea of the relocation of one or more district-wide programs is a good idea for consideration, particularly in schools where we don't want to expand them for redistrict or other reasons. That's a basic difference I'm explaining to you. Okay? 6, finding. While expansion at the high school would trigger while expansion at the Heath School would trigger undesirable redistricting, there is capacity to add classrooms at Heath should it be necessary for future district-wide capacity. So there we've separated the Heath issue out. 7, finding HMFH's addendum presents the potential.
What addendum? Where is it? And have we seen it?
Well, it's in the total HMFH written report.
This committee has not seen it.
I haven't seen it. This is.
It's not a finding. It's simply not a finding.
Yeah, this is a printout of the report. It's not there.
That's interesting. That's the printout of
This is the two pieces that you sent us, or Betsy sent us, that were, the two gigantic PDFs assembled into one.
And how many pages are there?
There was 46 pages.
Okay, so HMFH has just sent us a draft of their full report, which you haven't seen yet.
Okay, all right.
But that's not a finding of this committee. I'm sorry.
No,
We
that's all
cannot.
right.
I do not accept that statement, period. Item 7 is not a valid statement.
Okay, once again, both versions mention Pierce, and so there is a way to handle that. There is no disagreement about the subject. There is a disagreement about whether it's a finding. Once again, I think it's easy to resolve that. And then, again, moved that the BSpace Committee recommends continuation of the single 9 through 12 high school tradition. And then moved that the BSpace Committee recommends that a second high school be considered only if it can be eligible for all students town-wide, and that the site, project, facility, cost, including MSBA involvement, and pedagogical considerations support such a solution. And I think both of those are in substance the same, as we've heard, and moved that the BSpace Committee recommends further study and a robust community process to explore options for expansion at the high school based on the 2000 HMFH concept study, which references possible use of the old Lincoln School and scheduling efficiencies that could reduce the size of a physical addition. So that adds a thought about bringing in a community process. And finally, move that the BSpace Committee recommends that the old Lincoln School continue to be used as flexible space for use while the permanent portion of the capacity solution is being built and/or as part of the high school expansion solution on an interim or permanent basis.
Mr. Chair.
Yes, please.
Can I make a suggestion on how to approach this?
Sure.
And perhaps let's take a lesson from the way the advisory committee works. If we're going to sit and argue about the competing words, word by word, we're never going to get through this. What I would suggest is a structured kind of Robert Rules procedure similar to town meeting, where we have a main motion, someone moves to amend, we take a vote, majority wins, and we move on. Because unless we do something like that, we're never going to get through this.
I agree. Anybody disagree with that suggestion?
I agree with it. We should probably start with the Betsy Neal version, for lack of a better term. And-
So be it.
And then we can add
Call it
bits,
A and B.
add bits from the Rebecca version as we go, as
Good.
mentions.
Good.
So we can just procedurally say that the BD motion, which you see on the screen, is the main motion. That's the starting point,
Right.
and then you would move to amend. So perhaps we can start with the easy ones where the words agree. And then, and then we can have a discussion with each one. And so I'll move the language you see in the first motion. I'll start it off.
The first two lines.
First two lines.
Which happens to be the same, right?
Right.
Right.
Okay.
Second.
So can I discuss it, going back to my earlier?
Discuss
Please,
and-
that's
discuss
part of
and
Robert's
amend.
rules.
Yes, right.
Just for a moment. So, the fact that you say in that language that it has served Brookline so well and for so long makes it like that's the only reason, like it's traditional and that's why we're doing it. And that makes me think that maybe, like as I said in my earlier point, that maybe more editorial justification is needed. Now, we're going to argue about how to phrase that editorial justification, but somebody else jump in here and tell me I'm wrong or tell me I'm right.
Actually, I was going to say, you were probably going to say the same. Go ahead.
No, I think you'll get into the problem of having to prove the negative. Why we didn't go to the 6th grade model, why we didn't go to the 8th grade, 7-8 model, why we didn't go through the K-7. Once you get into something more complicated, it becomes much more complicated.
George, at the end of last week's meeting, though, we were basically down to 7-12 our existing K-8 model. I mean, we had eliminated a lot of that other stuff already. So, I mean, I could see some bullet points like exist in the second motion, and they could say, no case has been made that the 7-12 model will be an educational advancement. The committee feels that there are sufficient options at our local schools, and the committee understands that retaining the K-8 option may cost more and may create project management issues, but is confident that the town has the resources to meet these or something. There's 3 quick bullet points.
Yeah, actually, I like all of those, I would either do that, or I would drop that has
Oh,
served Brookline so well for so
yeah.
long.
That's
Just
another
leave it.
option. That's another
I mean,
option. Absolutely, because it just makes it sound like
Right.
that's the reason we're doing it.
I'm
'cause
for
it's traditional.
simplicity and clarity personally.
Yeah,
If we can agree that you put a period after neighborhood,
so can I make a motion to amend?
Please.
Sure.
To drop the phrase "that has served Brookline so well for so long"?
Second.
Okay?
Very good. Okay, so are there discussion, is there, or do we see if there are any other
We're going to
amendments
have to do
first?
a polled vote, Alan. You've got to do, if we're going to take a vote on each component, they still have to be polled
Yeah,
votes.
that's all right. I wondered if there were people who wanted to make other
Maybe
amendments.
we'll see who votes no, but for the open meeting, public participation regulations, we
No
have to do
further
this.
discussion from me.
Okay?
If there are no further discussions, then
Vote to close discussion?
No.
You can make that motion if
You
it's
may if you
necessary.
like.
I'm going to call for a ballot vote on that.
okay. So
Come to more advisory.
let's take a roll call vote. Let's go from Phil and
Are
just,
we voting on the amendment or the motion?
know the amendment.
Amendment.
We have to know what the motion is by whether or not the amendment carries.
Amendment is to delete the phrase, "that has served Brookline so well for so long."
I
Bill.
vote in favor.
George,
Favor. Yay.
Michael,
Yes.
Neil,
Yes.
Ken,
Aye.
Betsy,
Aye.
Alan, yes.
All right, it's unanimous.
Got it.
Rebecca?
Oh, Rebecca,
Yes,
vote.
Okay, she voted yes.
that was a yes vote.
Yes, we got it.
Okay, so the main motion is now up there, and it's just removed the last clause.
Okay.
Okay.
Is there any discussion?
I move the main motion.
Seconded.
Okay,
Been moved
Oh,
to second.
all right.
so
Right.
just vote.
so now we have to do a roll call vote again. So,
You know what?
yes,
To make things go faster, I know these are polled votes, but we can have everybody, if anyone wishes to vote no, then you can say that everybody, oh, never mind. This is crazy. This is crazy. Do it, do it.
since we're
do it.
going to go around in the
All right.
same order each time, I don't think I need to call everybody's name.
Right.
Would you just go around and vote yes or no?
Aye.
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 Goldstein, aye.
Do it, aye.
Aye. We,
All right.
thank you. Okay, we have one motion done. Next motion. That the BSpace Committee recommends a strategic expansion of a number of existing neighborhood schools, expand in place, to meet the challenges of the increased school enrollment as the elementary school, at the elementary school level. BSpace came to the consideration considering
The conclusion.
meeting or exceeding current educational program and must maintain Brookline's reputation for educational excellence. Do I have to read all these?
We don't have to vote these. I think we've already voted those.
Well, all right, but it's another motion.
Oh, right, okay, all right. But that part well, all right.
Okay, so we have that motion on the table. Is there any discussion? Any amendments that anyone would like to make? Okay,
Yes. How about drop to meet the challenges of the increased school enrollment at the elementary school level? That's what we're here for. Shorten it up.
Sorry, Phil, will you say it again, please?
How about dropping to meet the challenges of the increased school enrollment at the elementary school level? That's what we're here for. Let's shorten it up and just get rid of it, or not, and just go.
And not the high school?
No, the high school,
This is all the K-8.
This is all K-8.
this is K-8.
Well, no, but in the last bullet point, well, there's no bullets.
Right.
That's true.
You're right. But then it's,
I think you can drop at the
At the
elementary
elementary
school
school
level, and it makes sense.
Yeah, but I do believe to meet increased enrollment is important as a statement of why we're doing this.
but that's in our charge.
so the
But the
amendment,
charge is not part of what we're voting.
yeah, I mean, I happen to like to have the charge up there, but the amendment is to delete at the elementary school level, if I'm not mistaken. Is that,
I'll move that.
Second.
any discussion? Okay, let's go around and vote on that amendment.
Kramer, yes.
Aye.
Sandman, aye, yes.
Waschinsky,
Waschinsky, yes.
Goldstein, yes.
DeWitt, yes.
Morse, yes. We're set.
Rebecca.
Rebecca.
Oh, yes.
Sorry, Rebecca. Okay, so we have that done.
Now we can fight.
Okay, now we go to the next.
We're at the main motion. So we've now,
Oh,
to vote the
sorry
motion.
about that, you're absolutely right.
so the main motion is on the screen. It's the original minus that phrase we just deleted.
Is there any discussion? Let's go around with the vote, please.
Kramer, yes.
Cole, yes.
Sandman, yes.
Waschinsky, yes.
Goldstein, yes.
DeWitt, yes.
Morse, yes.
Stone?
Yes?
Stone, yes.
Stone, yes. It's unanimous. Good. Okay.
Now it gets complicated.
Moved. Although a July 2013 feasibility study by HMFH Architects provides information to determine a direction to expand school capacity, more information and study is needed to determine the exact configuration of the expand-in-place program. BSpace recommends the following guidelines as a starting
So
point.
can we stop here, since this is where
Right.
Rebecca's version differs? And by the way, I agree in part with Rebecca's. I agree that, I think guidelines is too weak, and I would say something, although I also differ with Rebecca in that I don't know that I want to call each bullet point a finding afterwards either.
Yeah.
So I would say the last sentence.
Were you in the first paragraph, Ken?
First paragraph of the last sentence of the first paragraph of the third motion.
So are we,
I would say BSpace recommends the following program elements.
Yeah, I think that, I agree with you, that the guidelines word bothered me, and on the other hand, the findings word is, in some cases, too strong, so.
Or two not findings.
Yeah.
I like that program element.
Program elements.
Okay, recommends the program elements. Do you want to keep starting point?
No, I don't like starting.
No, I don't like
Just
starting.
program
Because-
elements.
Well, let's not open the door to having another 9-month process.
Okay.
All right.
Not that I think that Alan would stand for that, but let's not give anybody a foot.
Neil, could you type that in parentheses or something?
yeah, hang
Pending
on,
a vote.
let me just save what we did, so we get,
There was a new file.
okay, the following guidelines, the following,
Program elements,
Program elements.
colon.
Can somebody read the whole motion?
Yeah, just a sec.
We're not done
We're
yet,
not, we're
Rebecca.
not finished yet, though. Well, Rebecca, it simply takes the last phrase, guidelines as a starting point, out and substitutes program elements.
But I'm not looking at that version, I don't have that in front of me.
Okay. Although a July 2013 feasibility study by HMFH Architects provides information to determine a direction to expand school capacity, more information and study is needed to determine the exact configuration of the Expand in Space program. BSpace recommends the following program elements, colon.
I'd also,
My only concern is making a motion that suggests more study, saying that more study and information is necessary, given the very short time frame that we're working on.
Yep.
I want to give the school committee as much information as we can, but it worries me to recommend further study and collection of information when that may not be possible in the
I
time
agree.
frame given.
So, how about if we say, although a July feasibility study provides information to determine the direction of school expansion, some remaining decisions need to be made, or some remaining
To determine the exact
to determine the exact
configuration.
configuration.
Could we, I'm sorry, could we take, if we used the early language, the introductory language of the second motion, and then use what we just agreed to in terms of program recommendations at the end? So it would be recommends the school committee review of the feasibility study, best configuration of direction for expanding school capacity to existing schools with the following program recommendations, or what was the language,
Program elements.
Elements.
program elements?
you know, Rebecca, this is George. I'm not sure what that,
Okay.
It's very hard to do
Rebecca,
some-
Susan's going to try to take a picture and text it to you so you can see the language. We'll see this if this works.
Okay. I I was also uncomfortable with a motion that started with although and referred to the
Yes.
HMFH study, because it sounds like we're discounting it
Okay,
to me.
I think we can agree with that, and I have to say, I understand at least what drove it, which is the HMFH study is not the final word on many things, and it actually contains some things that are, right, subject to further consideration. So I would be careful about using it as the touchstone on which any determinations are made.
Oh, geez, I mean, we're making this whole, let's get realistic here, we're making this whole assumption that we can expand in place based on this study.
That's true. All I'm trying to, actually, I should be clear. What I was trying to say is that George is right, it's a concept study. And to
Right.
the extent that we are relying on it for data, we have to use it. But there may be other information that's going to be, other questions that can and should be asked, all right? So I'm trying to be careful about saying this is the final word, all right? All I want to do is not say it's the final word. And if you can think of a way to say it, I'm happy.
Can I recommend that we take Rebecca's version, the first part of the third motion, which says that the BSpace Committee recommends to the school committee a review of the July 2013 feasibility study by HMFH Architects to determine the best configuration of and direction for expanding school capacity at existing schools, period. And then BSpace recommends the following program elements.
So, Ken, your understanding of that motion you just made is we're telling them to look at the report
It's
to
not
make
the old
their own
report.
conclusions?
No, we're telling them to look at it because we understand that they may decide to take things in a different direction as more information becomes available. But we're being firm that we are recommending these elements. Let them find reasons why they want to depart from those recommended elements, but
So, could we say then, if that's what you're saying, the BSpace Committee recommends to the school committee to review not a review of, but to review is that what you're saying? Because I'm not clear on what's being said here in this motion.
Rebecca's language was, the BSpace Committee recommends to the committee a review of the 2013 study.
So what are you recommending to the school committee? That they review it, or
No,
someone else reviews it, or?
Well, we're recommending two things to them. We're recommending that they adopt a plan with the program elements that we're about to describe, but we also recommend that they take a close look at the HMFH study.
So what I have highlighted there is what I think Ken is recommending.
We could change the order of those two things, since I would just as soon be firm in the program elements that we're directing.
Move that the BSpace Committee recommends to the school committee a review. Does that mean to review?
That the school committee
I think
review?
That the school committee reviews?
I think it's the same either way, but
I would
anyway.
say that the school committee use.
Use?
Oh, that's what I was thinking.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah, that's very,
Look at
that
the
says,
concept
come on,
study.
we've got this
That the
study.
school
Use
committee
this as your
uses-
jumping off point.
Right.
Yeah.
Good, all right,
Right.
that's good.
Look at the
Use.
concept study and consider these.
School committee
separate.
use
That I get.
the July 200
recommends that the school committee
Use.
uses.
expand school capacity at existing schools based upon the feasibility study by HMFH Architects.
Well, that's actually a different way of saying that, yeah. Recommends that the,
School capacity, existing schools, comma, considering the following program elements. Take out BSpace
Or
recommend,
including the following.
You want me to do?
all the way to following.
One other thing, sorry, there's one other thing, there's a specific, they refer throughout the report, if we're gonna make the report here, this report is important, read it. They refer to the 3 plus HS
right,
package.
right.
That language, that 3 plus HS belongs in here. That, because expanded place could also mean the 4 plus HS, which none of us like because it wasn't going to provide proper common space for the school.
But I would argue the 3 plus HS is really the starting point. It's, they recommend 999.
Yeah, oh, absolutely, but I'm not suggesting that you can say starting point or whatever as the place to start, but the 3HS term should be in there, so that there's no confusion in anybody's minds that we're not talking about the 4, adding, modulars only at the, only modulars essentially at 4 different schools and not doing anything with cafeterias and gyms. You could certainly say,
Recommends the following program elements which were derived from the.
Based
three-
on,
yeah,
how about
derived from,
based on the
based on the
3 plus
plus
HS.
HS option.
So does someone want to move this language?
Okay, so the language that you're talking about
You
is,
highlight the language we're voting.
yeah,
It's,
Highlight the language, I
it's
think.
got the green line under it, yeah.
right.
Okay.
Which means Microsoft doesn't like it.
Right. Your syntax and your grammar are wrong.
Okay, I'll certainly.
Well, this isn't the main motion, it's just a.
Yeah,
So move this as an amendment to substitute for the first
right,
paragraph, the
right.
preamble to the
Right.
motion.
right, that's the parliamentary way to do
I
it.
second that.
Okay, is there any discussion?
What was just proposed?
Yeah, we should read it to Rebecca.
Yeah.
Okay, Rebecca, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay, move that the BSpace Committee recommends that the school committee use the July 2013 feasibility study by HMFH Architects to determine the best configuration of and direction for expanding school capacity at existing schools. BSpace recommends the following program elements based on the 3 plus HS option.
Can I make one time?
Michael, before, I want to let Rebecca absorb that and see if she has any comment. I apologize, just for a moment.
Sounds great.
Okay, great. Go, Michael.
I would just take the, based on the 3HS option and move it to the before B space. Does that make sense?
Whoa. So,
We're
so how,
expanding school capacity at existing schools based on the 3 plus HS option.
got it. I agree.
Up there, just before the first period.
Yeah.
After schools.
Right there, there you go. Keep highlighting, go down to the end of the sentence. No, the other
The
end.
other way.
That's the beginning where I.
Move that to the end of the previous
And
sentence.
move it to the end of the previous sentence,
Right after schools.
right after schools before the period. There we go, so Microsoft will like it. It seems to me that flows better and it makes it very clear what we're talking about.
Okay. Rebecca, do you want me to read that, or are you satisfied? We're just moving the 3 plus HS option to after schools.
Sure, no, sounds fine. And is it BSpace recommends consideration of the following program elements, or are we actually affirmatively recommending these program elements?
Recommended.
Recommend.
Recommending program elements.
Do this.
Rebecca would rather not do this.
I move the language as amended.
Okay, read it out
so
all
it-
together.
Just
Please.
one, can I make a point
Yep.
before? And that is that it's not necessarily true that we're going to recommend that the school committee adopt all of the program elements we're about to list. So it should
We're
be some
recommending.
combination of,
Recommends many of, but not all.
Recommends,
some
Say,
combination, some
recommends are-
combination of.
Yeah, or an appropriate combination of.
An appropriate combination of is better.
Don't pick an inappropriate one.
Yeah, that's right. Don't pick an inappropriate one.
Of,
There we go.
yeah.
Why are we, increasing the vagueness of it that way.
Because when we make the list, we don't want to suggest that, to the school committee, that we're recommending that we adopt everything in that list.
There were some alternatives in the list.
Yeah, because the
There's
list includes
some things that are
alternatives.
more discretionary than others, and certainly,
I think we could say, as you get to those things, you could say, consider.
well, the truth is, yeah, I'm inclined to agree with Ken here. I mean, this is actually adding a kind of equivocation when, down below, there are all kinds of combinations to pick and choose from.
I don't mind taking the equivocation out.
Yeah.
Personally, I'm much more in favor of saying, do this. But,
Okay.
So I, you know.
But we're not recommending do everything that we're about to list.
That's true, we're not.
So that's the,
How about instead of recommends, endorses?
Definitely not. We're recommending.
But I mean, but if we're,
Rebecca, I'm not endorsing, I'm recommending.
but, no, I'm just saying. this
well,
is-
Rebecca,
The whole list being, right, if everything in the list, what Alan was saying, if
So-
everything in the list can't be done, it can't all be done, right? So we're endorsing the use of the following program elements, but not saying you should do all of them. So that's endorsing them.
okay, so we're close to an amendment, but Michael has a
Well,
suggestion.
I just want to know if anybody in the room has read the Boston Globe article about the increasing lack of civility in meetings in Brookline, or sorry, meetings in, I beg your pardon, a Freudian slip, meetings in towns and cities in Massachusetts, as we're arguing with each other. I'm not endorsing, I'm recommending.
What I'm just telling, I mean, it was a comment.
Okay.
I like your.
So where are we?
So I think Mel had suggested recommends consideration. Is that true, Mel?
That's fuzzing it.
Yeah, I think that's fuzzing it too. I like
Okay.
I like the strong idea of recommending, and as we get to a
We can fuzz it in the.
alternative that's an option, then we can make,
Fuzz it there.
right.
Okay.
How about if we jump ahead? Jump ahead.
We could add the words and or at the end of each of the recommendations.
There you go.
There you go.
Okay,
Except
so-
some of them
See if this
are.
doesn't feed back as
lines,
much.
but-
Okay, so let's proceed.
We can always reconsider as we go.
Yeah.
We can come back to the language. We got to move on.
Yeah.
Right.
We want to
Better
get
get
out
through
of
it.
here at a reasonable hour.
So can we move this one?
Okay.
So I
So
move-
let's go to number one.
But wait, let's move this first.
Oh,
I'm going to move this
sorry about
first.
that.
That's okay.
Okay,
So
I've
move-
got a
move-
motion and a second.
I move the
Can you highlight
languages.
what we're voting on?
Yep, there it is, except for the elements. But
I move the language as amended.
Second.
Okay, any more discussion? Seeing none, let's go around the room quickly.
Kramer, yes.
Cole, yes.
Sandman, yes.
Wyszynski, yes.
Goldstein, yes.
DeWitt, yes.
Morse, yes.
Rebecca?
Done, yes.
Okay, so let's continue now. So number one is, in close consultation with the MSBA, discuss the possibility of increasing the size of the devotion school project to the maximum extent that the site project feasibility, cost including MSBA involvement, and pedagogical,
Sorry.
considerations allow.
Okay, and then the alternative language
That's really
is.
strong. Discuss the possibility of maybe doing something.
Exactly. But we recommend it.
But we recommend it
Well,
strongly.
see,
Well,
but
endorse
it,
it.
but actually, the intent was go to the MSBA and see if they'll fund a larger
Even
school.
if they won't, we should be able to fund it, right? I mean, if we're convinced that's part of a solution, we should be able to fund it.
That's assuming they don't drop the original funding. Maybe. Well,
Maybe.
All right,
Consider.
I think the issue here is that
think
we
that
have been
expanding
repeatedly,
Fiscal is part of the.
Devotion.
oh,
Devotion.
devotion.
It's
We're talking-
devotion we're talking
Devotion.
about.
I'm sorry. Expanding devotion is part of this, an inherent part of this solution, right?
Right.
So we have to make that clear to the school committee that that's integral in this solution.
I agree with George.
Yep, even I agree with George.
So let's just say,
Right. At all costs?
Well, I mean, if we're gonna throw the devotion project away, of course not. But, I mean, if the MSBA said, we've committed to a funding level, you're funding the additional 9 classrooms on your own, yeah, I would do that.
Yeah, okay, yeah, I probably would too, but
So,
All
so
right, so are
the,
you suggesting language change, or are
I
you,
am.
okay, and what we need?
here's Rebecca's alternate.
right.
Line that up.
Note the parenthesis, including continued MSBA partnership in Rebecca's.
It says two, but,
In what you're calling my version, if you just put the period after considerations allow,
Yeah,
it, I think serves what people have just been talking about.
yeah, take out finding colon and
Yeah.
and put the
Yeah.
period just where she said it.
Right,
Right.
right. Just say increasing the size of the devotion school project, et cetera,
Right.
Through allow.
through allow, right.
Forget finding.
And cross out finding, correct.
okay.
And I just don't know if, maybe you should say something about 5 sections in there, 5 sections per grade. Is it worth mentioning that?
I think that would constrain the conversation more than,
It's already going to 4.5 sections.
Okay. I move the language as amended.
Second.
Is there more discussion? Hearing none. Let's hear it.
Roll
Mary, yes.
call?
Cole, yes.
Sandman, yes.
Waschinsky, yes.
Goldstein, yes.
DeWitt, yes.
Morse, yes.
Stone?
yes.
Great,
Okay.
Right.
great progress. Okay.
So next is Driscoll.
Focus on renovating and expanding the Driscoll School to the maximum extent that the site, project feasibility, cost, and pedagogical considerations allow. The specifications for the expansion should be designed for eligibility for MSBA reimbursement to the extent possible.
So I would just change
Yes.
focus on to
Expand.
Renovate and expand.
renovate and expand, right?
Well, if you look at, if we want to look at the alternative,
But this,
Take
this,
away, do the same thing with this one that we did with the first one.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Take the first language, repeat it, and stick in Driscoll instead of.
exactly.
Good.
I like it.
No, Neil, just take the one you already have for number 1 and the next
So
one.
we read expand the Driscoll School to the maximum extent that the site project feasibility, cost, including potential MSBA partnership and pedagogical considerations allow, period.
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 Right.
Right.
Oh, renovate and expand?
Yeah, say
Yeah,
renovate and
right,
expand.
right.
Verb tenses to agree.
Renovate.
Okay,
Not expanding,
Yeah.
expand.
Expand, no ing.
Yes.
Hang on. Renovate and expand
does it
Driscoll
hurt our
s-
chances of getting
school to the maximum extent.
The site project feasibility and cost.
So is that the way?
Yeah,
Yeah, that's it.
so do I have a motion for
Moved.
Second.
Second.
any discussion? Let's hear it.
Kramer, yes.
Cole, yes.
Sandman, yes.
Waschinsky, yes.
Goldstein, yes.
DeWitt, yes.
Morse, yes.
Stone, yes.
Okay, we've got it. We're making great progress here. Keep it up.
Can I suggest putting 5, what is now 5 in place of what is now 4? So let's do them in the order that we're really looking at them.
Good.
Sure.
So Lawrence is next.
Jump Lawrence up.
So, you're gonna have to educate me on this one, because we're adding modulars to Lawrence, but you're suggesting that the school committee consider expansion beyond the current modular program?
Yes, and I suppose it's a possibility that we might then replace that expansion and remove the modulars or use them somewhere else.
So, HMFH.
So, George, you can answer a technical question for me. Are these modulars movable?
No. I mean, they're not reusable. It's not like office
It's
trailers.
really prefab construction
Prefab
on site.
construction. You want to move them, you demolish them.
Okay,
They're not like office trailers, they're not like double
Okay.
wides.
all right.
You can't unscrew them? Okay. So the HMFH suggested doing a very significant configuration change to Lawrence to add both classrooms and common space. That would really build the site out substantially. And there's a certain amount of queasiness on the part of a couple of committee members about whether that's the best way to go. And so here, that is, I think we want to say that's an option. And suggest a specific alternative, which is Pierce, as I understand it. Am I not right about that?
Yeah, I mean, it is a possible alternative.
Yeah.
Right,
Did we skip over the modulars in the rear of New Orleans School?
we
Yeah,
moved
haven't
it
got
up.
there yet.
We
We-
moved
we've-
it up, Rebecca.
We've given Lawrence first before,
Oh, okay,
it's
sorry.
just reversed order.
We
that's
have not
all.
eliminated it.
So I guess my concern are about Lawrence are twofold. One is we seemingly have made a decision to add 4 modular classrooms. And two, and that doesn't necessarily preclude additional additions to Lawrence, but it makes the town look pretty foolish adding modulars and then going back and adding yet another addition after we did a major renovation addition like 7 or 10 years ago. So I would suggest that either you do a major renovation addition to Lawrence or you do the modulars, but you don't do both. Secondly, I'm really concerned about that site's ability to carry much more capacity than it has even currently, much less with the additional 4 more modulars in terms of access primarily. Transportation connections are weak. So I'm not real convinced that Lawrence, beyond the modulars, is any place to look.
So I'll say, what I think Rebecca, I think that you and I had that conversation about the ability of the area to absorb additional parking, teacher parking and parents drop-off and so forth. We may have had that conversation offline, so I just want to repeat in public that I talked to the...
I thought it was at the table.
Was it the table? Okay. All right, I'll repeat it anyways. The town transportation administrator and I talked about this, and his view was, of all of the various sites that we're considering, Lawrence is the most constrained in terms of additional parking and capacity to absorb more traffic.
Yes, I think that that's part of the reason that Rebecca's, in this case,
Yeah.
Rebecca's read very differently.
Right, so let's take a look.
Okay, so Rebecca's read, expansion at the Lawrence School in addition to the modular additions currently planned may have local traffic impact and other open space impact that should be further studied.
And I'm going to say that is not a finding.
Yeah, and
Well, we're taking out all the finding words.
For any of these, right?
We've eliminated
Okay,
finding.
just,
It's not a program
It's a
element
point.
either. So-
yeah, right. And to be honest, shouldn't we look at traffic impacts everywhere and not exclusively Lawrence?
Oh, no question about it. But so
So why are we having it as an additional comment?
because the one bit of information that I can give you about traffic impacts everywhere, because I did talk about
And
traffic impacts everywhere,
Right.
is that this is the one site where the transportation administrator said it's going to be ugly there.
Okay, and
Other
has,
TLs would absorb the additional traffic.
and has he even understood what we're proposing for Driscoll in that case?
Yeah, we talked about that. Yeah, I went over.
You know, this is one where your sidebar conversation is interesting and useful, but it would be much better if it were a report to the school committee on traffic impacts as to possible expansion sites, and therefore, I am very reluctant to add it to one site compared to another one.
Okay, then let's at least add a comment, a recommendation that the,
All sites be studied for traffic impacts, absolutely, totally agree.
but what is generally the committee's attitude toward Lawrence? Do you think it's expandable beyond the modulars?
Well, HMFH did, and I think
I
that's.
know they did, but but
It's a question
What-
of
what
should,
is-
not could. Because it's not, it's a question of how you can physically cram additional classrooms in there.
right,
And the additional common space. It would require very significant reconfiguration of the school.
right.
They showed us how they were gonna move a gym from one side to the other, a whole bunch of
It's an I mean,
Big deal.
the way they presented it would be as significant as what was done at Runkle, I think,
Right.
in terms of overall impact
On a school that we
on a
did
project.
about 20
Yes,
years
right,
ago.
right. Which may be why modulars make more sense there, and I don't know what else.
Up here.
I unfortunately have come to that conclusion, Betsy. I don't like modulars, but in this case, it seems to make sense.
So why don't we just take this piece off and not reference Lawrence? It's referenced in the main motion, which is about the HMFH study, which includes Lawrence expansion for consideration, but we don't have to do an extra program element about Lawrence specifically.
Well, but that begs the question of what we're differing in our view here. The committee differs from HMFH's on balance. I think we all have the heebie-jeebies about following their recommendations on Lawrence.
And Heath, for that
Well,
matter.
I mean, the first two program elements also differ from HMFH's.
Right,
Yep.
which is why it's very important to be careful about this. But let me just point out that we are now going to be worrying, and maybe there are other ways of providing the classrooms, but if there are 4 modulars at Lawrence, then the burden is going to be shifted to other sites.
Right.
Right.
Just be clear, that's all.
So there was a potential to go beyond their recommendation at Driscoll, and a potential to go beyond their recommendation at Devotion.
And if people are concerned about the impact of expansion as the HMFH study proposed at Lawrence, I think you're going to find similar concerns will rise at Driscoll.
Except that the Driscoll site.
Is equally
based on their
constrained.
drawings, the Driscoll site is, has space. It was a much simpler reconfiguration.
But even for the Driscoll, we qualified it by saying that, to the maximum extent that the site.
Well,
feasibility
yeah, right.
so on will allow, so why wouldn't that same language
Right.
be okay for?
Well, that's true. I mean, maybe that's the same language you use everywhere, whatever the site will bear, and we don't have to make determinations.
Except that it seems to me that this, it seems to be useful with regard to Lawrence, to take the question of how do we feel about 4 versus
8.
And if we feel, no, we don't want to do 8, that we have to find someplace else for those 4 classrooms.
Which is to say you are definitely at that point moving Driscoll in the direction of 12.
So I would say the next number should actually be modulars at Heath, because that's sort of more of a low-hanging fruit and more of an easy choice.
Well, except that Heath is unattractive because it's in the wrong location, and that's one of the reasons why we mention the movement, the potential movement of some district-wide programs.
I understand. So, it's not desirable location-wise if you're talking about adding 200 students there, but for 100 students, it does have some value. And especially if you add in this great new idea of using it for district-wide programs, I think it could. And anyway, I think it's an easier brain exercise than Lawrence. So if we're going in order of no-brainer, I think Heath is next.
Well,
Not sure I would have put it that way, but
It's getting late for me, so.
In some respects, I think that because Lincoln is closer to the area that is growing most quickly, that it's Lincoln, that would be my,
Well, but
Old or
except that HMFH,
New.
except that HMFH said that you can't do Lincoln.
No.
And also because Heath has the common area capacity where Lincoln doesn't.
So I think that HMFH made my understanding is that HMFH made an assumption that, that using the parking lot would not be acceptable.
What they said actually was, in part, the cafeteria is not big enough to handle that number of students as common space.
You know, New Lincoln, I don't know where the modular idea came up again, but the building commission had detailed studies of modulars at Heath and New Lincoln and Lawrence, and New Lincoln was I mean, it could not be well accommodated in New Lincoln.
That's what
even modular.
That's what HMFH said too.
So that should be all, I don't think that should be on the table.
I'll move to remove Lincoln
Second,
based on
third.
George's information.
I guess
But this is wishy-washy.
I guess what I would do is try and figure out a statement that we can make to ask the school committee.
And what will the school committee learn that the building commission doesn't already know?
I don't know that. They may come to the same conclusion.
Are they qualified to decide? If the building commission has rejected it, I think you should confer with the building commission.
I think you can vote against the motion too.
Yeah, right.
Well, or the
Right.
school committee could come to the building commission
Yeah,
and just
right.
pull out the old piece of paper. and
But I think it's important to go on record that this has already been reviewed, and there is what do you want to call it, George, a finding?
The building commission found that modulars were not practical at New Lincoln. The connections were impossible. It's not just putting them on site, it's connecting them in a handicap accessible way to the main building so that everyone has equal access. It's very difficult at New Lincoln.
All right, how about this? School committee should confer with the building commission as to the feasibility of adding modular classrooms to New Lincoln School.
Okay.
Okay.
Give it to me.
Negative, confirm that it's not
Give it to me.
possible.
All right, school committee should,
I think
well,
this- I think
use
this is-
consider.
I think this is way down on the list.
Yeah, right.
Let's get it done with, come on, let's finish this.
All right, but I'm trying, all right. Consult with the building commission
Yep.
about the feasibility of adding modular classrooms.
To confirm that, to confirm that,
Not a good site.
that it's not feasible.
That it is not feasible to add modular classrooms.
That's part of our guidance. This
Right.
doesn't work, guys, unless you find out something different.
Okay. Consult with the building commission to confirm that it is not feasible to add modular classrooms.
Why don't you say, consult with the building commission on the feasibility of modular classrooms.
All right.
Okay, fine.
Why do we, since it wasn't in the HMFH report at all, it was in the list of recommended motions to consider modulars at Lincoln. We can just not have that. We don't have to say anything about modulars at Lincoln. They weren't in the report. We were putting them there with this.
Oh, we're trying to open the door to have at least an opportunity to find out if it's feasible.
Or close the door so it
Or
doesn't
we
come up
close the door and take it off the list.
Well, close the door so it doesn't
It
come up
sounds
again.
like we're saying the door is closed and you should go to the building commission and confirm that. So why say it
That's
at all?
what we're saying.
Well, I agree
But it's
with
gonna come
Rebecca.
up, and it should, let's be as comprehensive as we can.
But it'll be in the report. I don't think it needs to be in the motion.
Right, but these are recommendations for program elements. Or potentially recommending that there not be a program element that wasn't considered.
Right.
All right, so we will neither endorse nor recommend.
So the motion is to remove.
I think we've deleted the possibility.
Oh, we need to
Yeah,
move it.
right, a motion to,
No, I'm just getting it out of the way.
sorry, Neil.
Well,
Okay.
we've got the motion on the table. We might as well.
Okay, so why don't you do a vote and
Right.
then I'll.
I move that we.
We have a motion.
I move that we delete the program element addressing modulars at New Lincoln School.
We have a second. Is there any more discussion? Let's go, Phil.
Kramer, yes.
Cole, yes.
Sandman, yes.
Shinsky, yes.
Goldstein, yes.
DeWitt, yes.
Morse, yes.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, let's proceed.
Did we deal with Lawrence? Did we get the language final on Lawrence?
We were gonna
Okay,
put
all right,
Heath-
we're holding it?
We were thinking about putting Heath next on the list.
Okay, all right,
'cause-
that's fine. I'm just trying to not be confused.
Why change now?
Okay, so,
Betsy, for you?
so we're at Heath.
Yeah,
So here's one version. And the other version. So the other version breaks it up into district-wide programs being kind of school agnostic, and then talks about Heath.
So here's the situation with Heath, you actually have an opportunity, enough land and a building configuration where you can add on to it easily, right?
Right.
But the problem is if you just add standard K-8 classrooms, it triggers redistricting that's not desirable.
Right, we
Right.
get the Baldwin effect.
So if you added on space to Heath and you programmed it as town-wide programs, that's what we're recommending.
That's what we're trying to
Articulate.
say.
Got it.
Right,
Okay.
To the extent pedagogically.
right.
right. There's a lot of programs that they don't want to do that to.
And with,
So out of my pay scale. Pedagogy. I can't even say it.
and with the and with the recognition that because Heath has so recently been expanded with the help of MSBA,
Like a stick in the eye. of
it's
MSB.
unlikely to pass muster so quickly again.
May I suggest that we take the version labeled RS, we remove, in 5 and 6, we remove the word finding in each of them and leave it as it is.
Yeah, I could go for that.
Sure.
Yep.
All right, do it. And then we'll have a motion. If you just package them,
So moved.
I want to see it.
Can somebody explain to me what Neil just?
he's combining the RS 5 and 6 and taking out the word finding and making them one item.
I need to see it in place.
And we're going to look at it.
Well, I don't think it matters whether it's one item.
two? Okay.
items,
I would make it the same two items that,
Except your.
leaving out finding.
Okay,
And I kind of like having the district-wide program as its own thing,
okay.
Right, right.
because it,
Maybe someplace else.
right, because it could apply to Baker.
So, but Rebecca,
Yes.
basically, the language is the same with the word finding deleted.
It's your language with the word finding deleted.
We could combine them, I just want to say, my discomfort with, BSpace talking about district-wide programs is that is deciding where those programs go is a very, very complicated, process, that is above most of our pay grades.
This is her
which
version.
Why we hire such great people to make those decisions.
This is your version, though.
Rebecca, we're going with your version.
So I'm just saying that we could combine them simply and say, expansion of each school would trigger undesirable redistricting, but there's capacity to add classrooms at each, should it be necessary for future district-wide capacity or placement of district-wide classrooms.
That's kind of what I thought was being proposed in the first place.
Rebecca, your original language is the language we're heading towards.
We like it.
I just,
Your
this really isn't about private ownership.
I understand.
No, but we're trying to sell your own words to you. That's the irony.
That's a hard sell.
So let's include each of those separately.
So,
Can we vote on these together?
So moved.
Second.
Items 3 and 4 in the language that is before you, one vote, both items.
Hold on.
Hold on.
Accept.
Read it.
Let's see it first.
That's what it was before. That's fine.
So, it would be 3 and 4 instead of 4 and
Items-
5.
It's items,
It would
sorry.
be 3 and 4.
Yes, you're right. You're
Well-
right, Betsy.
So let me,
I thought Neil had just moved them.
Should we include Baker as a possible place where expansion is possible?
Yeah, I would. in a
Why not?
separate-
It's
in
the
a
same
separate-
as Heath. You can do another item that just says the same thing for, substitute Baker for Heath. Or both in one,
Put it right there.
or Baker.
Yeah.
Yes, why not? One.
There's capacity at Baker and Heath, at Heath and Baker in the second line.
Yeah, need to add Baker to the second line, Neil. And Baker. Or Baker, yeah. Right. Okay, so Rebecca, we have added Baker to both of those, considering that both of them trigger undesirable redistricting but have site capacity.
And so, can somebody just read the motion?
Sure.
There are two numbers in the same motion. Number 3 now says, understanding that many considerations go into the placement of district-wide programs, expanded place may benefit from relocation of one or more district-wide programs. And then 4 says, while expansion at the Heath or Baker schools would trigger undesirable redistricting, there is capacity to add classrooms at Heath or Baker should it be necessary for future district-wide capacity.
There's another notion too. I mean, it's not just district-wide programs. There is an ability to put 100 more desks at Heath and accommodate those into the
Right.
system with minimal absurd redistricting consequences.
But yes, district-wide capacity is different from district-wide programs.
Oh, you're right.
So
Yeah.
district-wide capacity includes that, I believe, Ken.
District-wide capacity, you want to say capacity and/or programs, or?
Well, we did programs above, that's the thing, and we've left out identifying any schools, so in fact, it could be relevant for any or all schools.
Okay, how about that?
I move, we accept those.
Is there any other discussion?
Move the question.
Okay, Phil.
Kramer, yes.
Oh, yes.
Sandman, yes.
Waschinsky, yes.
Goldstein, yes.
DeWitt, yes.
Morse, yes.
Done, yes.
All right.
Thank you, Rebecca.
Lawrence.
So you need something even less committal on Lawrence,
Even more
If appropriate.
if appropriate.
So here's the alternate version. I don't know if that helps.
Not really.
I don't think so.
Really.
Well, I've been trashed for suggesting traffic, but I think it's there particularly.
Limited expansion?
I think we should reference I think we should be a little more specific. Despite the recommendation for a substantial renovation and expansion of Lawrence, the committee recommends to the school that the school committee focus on confirming whether or, actually, not despite, confirming on whether or not the site is capable of absorbing more than the modular classrooms currently being planned.
Despite the,
We didn't recommend a.
Shouldn't you say despite the HMFH report or HMFH, it's not the committee's recommendation, it was HMFH's.
It's
Despite the HMFH record.
recommendation of
HMFH study.
he recommends the school committee, we'll clean it up. Let me
Yeah.
get the thought down.
Consider site capacity.
Focus on ascertaining the true capacity of the site.
Focus
Or
on.
focus on
ascertaining.
ascertaining whether the capacity of the site will allow for more than the modular classrooms currently being planned.
Whether,
You like that?
Whether or not the site.
Getting very wordy.
Well, you can take the words out, but let's get the idea.
All right,
Okay,
yeah.
whether or not the site,
Will accommodate more than the 4 modular classrooms currently being planned.
Well, unless we want to recommend that they put the brakes on the 4 modular classrooms.
I don't think you can afford to do that.
No, I think they'll find fairly quickly.
No, that's underway.
I mean, it is, but maybe it was an error.
Ascertain
stop it
whether
now,
or
so-
not the site will accommodate, just take out focus and say ascertain whether or not the site will accommodate.
Maybe it's ascertain, yeah. You pick up the or not, too, just whether.
Yeah, whether.
Camel's a horse designed by a committee.
How's that look to people?
why don't you read it,
I move that language.
okay, why don't you read it for Rebecca? Excuse me?
Despite, Rebecca,
Yes.
number 6 says, despite the HMFH recommendation for a substantial expansion at Lawrence, the BSpace Committee recommends the school committee ascertain whether the site will accommodate more than the 4 modular classrooms currently planned.
And then to finish the thought, and pursue this option only if conditions allow, or,
Well,
I think that's pretty much
it
implied.
doesn't really say it, but.
Yeah.
So we're not going to talk about traffic, is that correct?
no,
Oh.
if you know, I think, we do have to look at traffic and review, but that, when you get the
But
report.
that's part
the
of
traffic and that- the
an
traffic report for that
evaluation,
one, we'll
right.
don't
I
do
mean,
it.
everywhere there is proposed expansion, there's got to be a traffic evaluation. And certainly, if the modulars go on the parking lot, it will have an impact.
So does this committee have an attitude toward the modulars?
I do. I don't know about the committee.
You mean to use of modules?
No, whether they should be proceeding, or does it preclude?
Oh, currently, should they go ahead?
No, I think it should proceed.
They are proceeding. That project is
Underway.
appropriated and underway.
Is
And-
that water over the dam? It is.
I think so.
Yes.
George, more to the point, it is part of the solution in the short term,
I know.
no? So
It just precludes other expansion.
that is correct.
Unless you tear them down.
That
Unless
is
you waste them.
correct.
That's right.
Yeah, right.
Okay,
Well-
so is anyone moving this language?
I'll move it. If a co-chairman is allowed to move it.
Why not?
Okay. Do I hear a second?
Yes, I think it was seconded
Okay.
by Mr.
Any more
Sandman.
discussion? Okay, Phil.
Kramer, yes.
Cole, yes.
Sandman, yes.
Waschinsky, yes.
Goldstein, yes.
DeWitt, yes.
Morse, yes.
Joan, yes.
Thank you.
Okay, I have a question about this one. Expanded place could also include the notion of early childhood education centers, which is this a reference to the 8 kinder? No, okay.
No. I think it means, A, at the moment, we are leasing space in various locations. B, we might lease more space in various locations. And C, if it were to be a way of freeing up classrooms at one site, there might be early education. In other words, early education might not be at every K through 8. It might be in some and not others, depending on capacity, but at least flexibly, you can think about them.
Early education is at almost none of the K-8s at this point.
Right, they're gone for the moment. They're
So-
out.
So is this talking about taking kindergartens temporarily out,
That's
or,
right.
or early education out?
Well, pre-K, if early education includes both pre-K and kindergarten, and if virtually all pre-Ks are out, the only thing left in early education to take out would be kindergarten. There is the other consideration, which is then that makes a change in the K through 8 configuration, which might have some other implications.
But I don't think anybody's suggesting we do that permanently.
No, interim.
It's,
For interim, that's right.
So the alternate version has no reference to early childhood education. Is that correct, Rebecca?
Right, I didn't see this as part of, I didn't feel like the BSpace committee had really discussed this issue in any detail at all, and so I didn't understand why there would be a recommendation on it. It's something that the schools have the capability to do already, it's something that's already been in the consideration of how to find temporary space, so I just didn't see the need to make a recommendation on it.
Okay, I have an amendment, which is to strike the language under 6.
I second that.
Any other discussion?
As long as you, school committee people, tell us that you'll look at this, then I don't think it needs to be in BSpace.
In fact, we have been looking at it, and we have failed to find anything practical that we could do with it, but we agree that were we able to find an opportunity, it makes some sense. Okay. I hear no, I've had a motion and it's been seconded. I hear no more discussion. Philip?
To strike, Kramer, yes.
Cole, yes.
Salmon, yes.
Waschinsky, yes.
Goldstein, yes.
DeWitt, yes.
Morse, yes.
Yeah.
Great.
Yes.
Now, I'm going to say that the reason for putting Pierce on the list is simply as a long-term recommendation. There, George, help me, there is no realistic possibility that we could demolish and rebuild Pierce in the time frame we've discussed. Thank you.
And I think that's what the wording says.
Yeah.
So it's totally consistent with that.
Well, I'm not sure it's renovation and expansion, it might be replacement,
Yes. More likely.
because I don't think there's
Yeah.
much room for renovation or expansion.
Renovation, expansion.
So you want to just say expansion
Or replacement.
Or
or
replacement.
replacement?
If I do
Renovation,
this,
expansion, won't rule it out, but I'd be shocked. Of the Pierce School, perhaps.
Okay. Let's move that language as it's sitting up there.
let me
Okay.
read it for Rebecca, make sure she understands.
Rebecca, did you hear the change?
No,
Okay, so it now says, consider possible future renovation, expansion, or replacement of the Pierce School. This option cannot be met in 2017 deadline, but could be implemented as part of a longer-term plan. So it's just the adding or expansion.
Or replacement, actually.
Sorry, or,
The
I'm
word-
sorry,
The
you're
word
right.
replacement.
Sorry, I misspoke. Or replacement, that's what's added. Okay, it's been moved and seconded. Is there any other discussion? Philip?
Kramer, yes.
Cole, yes.
Salmon, yes.
Waschinsky, yes.
Goldstein, yes.
DeWitt, yes.
Morse, yes?
Stone, yes.
Fabulous. Okay,
I think we've gone through the expand in place motions.
So we
Hallelujah.
Move the whole thing. Actually, I got one little minor one. Oh, no, I'm sorry. No, it was in the previous motion. Never mind.
so we'll move 1 through 6, including the motion just above it. Is that correct?
Right, the main motion plus items
1
1
through
through
6.
6.
Is there any discussion?
No
Yes.
discussion.
Okay, do I hear a second?
Second.
Okay.
What are we seconding? I'm sorry.
We're moving the main motion plus items 1 through 6, which we have already approved.
Got it, sorry.
Your turn.
Go,
Kramer,
Philip.
yes.
Cole, yes.
Salmon, yes.
Waschinsky, yes.
Goldstein, yes.
DeWitt, yes.
Morse, yes?
Stone, yes.
Okay.
Okay, we're at the
Next.
final motions.
Getting close. not even 9 o'clock.
So the first of the four motions are the same on both versions.
So,
So it is moved that the BSpace Committee recommends continuation of the single 9 through 12 high school tradition.
I'm not sure if language, continuing a tradition.
Yeah, that has been
you just continue
a tradition is,
single high school, end of discussion.
yeah, right. A tradition
Model.
has nothing to do with it.
Yeah.
Hazing is an old tradition, and we don't like that.
You speak for yourself, Michael.
We've been hazing you, so, you know.
How about
No kidding.
recommends that the school committee continue the one high school
Model.
model? Yes,
Single 9 through 12
single
high
one
school.
high school model, and
Do we want to say single 9 through 12 high school? Wrap it all up in one place.
should probably do that.
Yeah, let's say that.
Single-
9 through 12, right you are.
I vote for a hyphen. Neil, I vote for a hyphen.
Hyphen where?
Instead of through.
Not through hyphen.
You got it.
I think either, yeah, there we go.
And we need a little grammar cleanup.
Okay?
Recommends that the school committee continue. And that Brookline High School be expanded to accommodate, yeah, I think that
So
parses.
are we,
Capacity changed to a.
Well, we didn't have that in the, you want to add that?
And what?
That's what it says, I'm just reading it.
Maybe I'm missing something here.
I think capacity is different than enrollment.
The two move, we just had this first sentence here.
No,
And
it's
accommodate
been
the
enrollment.
It's
anticipated
either
capacity.
accommodate capacity or
Yeah.
enrollment.
Create the capacity.
Enrollment is what we're dealing with.
Oh, I see, this is different. Why is this different?
are we not going to call attention to the Schlunz Gym and Tappan Street Gym and Tappan Street addition?
We gonna,
Sir.
Are we going to opine on a particular high school
Well,
option?
I have an opinion on it.
we
if anyone
could,
cares.
if you like, refer to the concept study, which is the only data we've got.
So
Ken?
I mean, I do have an opinion on it. I mean, and by the way, the two things that are up there, considering expansion to the old Lincoln School and scheduling efficiencies, are definitely things that should be included too.
All right,
I think, though, the Schlunz Gym thing makes a lot of sense, and I would suggest the plan that HMFH has proposed in phases, first being Schlunz Gym, and then make some changes at the Tappan Street Gym to accommodate it, and then phase two as an option later would be the Tappan Street Classroom Science Wing that they showed, something that could be added
I
as a.
really don't think that the solution at the high school was up to BSpace to determine from the concept study. I think the best thing BSpace could do, having said that our solution for K through 8 does not affect the high school, is to suggest to the school committee that it have a robust process of exploration to determine from the concept study and community conversation the best way forward. I mean, if we can recommend that the school committee hire an outside firm to help us with that, great. But I don't think we should be deciding what we think is the best model based on the HMFH concept study. That's not BSpace's job.
You mean, are you saying, when you talk about model, you're talking about physical configuration of the existing high school, or you're talking about that first sentence about continuing the single 9 to 12 high school model?
No,
I think we're talking physical facilities now.
Yeah,
They gave us
Okay.
three expansions.
yeah.
I mean, we shouldn't be talking about Tappan versus Schwanz.
Yeah, yeah.
That's for the next phase. What we've already said is that we think that we should essentially expand the high school so that the model of BHS at the 9 through 12 high school should be preserved. And after that, it's up to the school
Well, then, in that case, I would just add 3, consideration of the consultant's, HMFH's.
Concept study.
Concept study,
All right, where,
Absolutely,
possibly implemented in phases.
all right, so Rebecca, we've just added item 1, the HMFH concept study, which is to say additional study should include HMFH concept study. 2, consideration of whether to expand the high school campus to the old Lincoln School. And 3, further examination of how scheduling efficiencies, et cetera. Are you
I would take off the old Lincoln School because the expansion of the high school campus could include things besides the old Lincoln School. Again, I think this is something we throw to the school committee and tell them to hire professionals to bring it through a process.
Well, they-
But remember,
they did
the
already.
HMFH study did include
Right.
the old Lincoln School, so it's
It's
redundant.
already in there.
It's part of,
No, I know.
it's part of what's going to be before you and therefore should be mentioned as if it exists.
But it does exist. It exists in the HMFH concept study.
Then we can mention it because it's in the concept study.
I don't think it makes a difference one way or the other.
I just don't understand why we are not allowed to mention it.
We can. I'm
It's
agnostic.
very clear that OLS has become unmentionable.
That is my point. I mention it. I choose to mention it. I do
Fine.
not find it so stigmatized that you cannot mention it.
I wouldn't argue.
I'm afraid to mention it myself.
All right, watch out. Watch out.
I like the motion as currently configured, and I'll move it.
Second.
Is there any other discussion?
I'm sorry, the whole motion is the,
Do you want us to read it out for you?
yes, please.
All right, moved that the BSpace Committee recommends that the school committee continue the single 9 through 12 high school model, and that Brookline High School be expanded to accommodate the anticipated enrollment of 2,500 students by 2022, period. The particular option for expansion should be determined after additional study and should include, 1, the HMFH concept study, 2, consideration of whether to expand the high school campus to the old Lincoln School, and 3, a further examination of how scheduling efficiencies could be used to reduce the size of a physical addition.
I think it's maybe the study should include, as opposed to the option should
Including,
include.
so instead of say, just additional study including, I don't know. No, that doesn't.
Yeah,
Particular, should be after additional study.
yeah, which should include, because it almost sounds like the option should
Yeah.
have all those things
Sure.
involved.
And I would also suggest we put the word approximate.
Yep, that
front of-
seems fair. Or projected.
Projected.
Projected is better because we know we've got that projection.
Well, just take out anticipated, it's the same thing. Put projected instead of anticipated.
Where
Anticipated enrollment or
anticipated is up on the first page, last,
End of
Part
that
of the
sentence.
redundancy
second,
part.
last
End of
line.
that line.
Department
Yeah,
of Redundancy
right.
There you go.
Department.
Yeah, okay, anticipated is there. The,
Well, you're saying take,
the enrollment.
Take out
okay.
anticipated.
And put in projected.
I did,
It's one or the other.
right.
Only one.
Let's get out the thesaurus.
And Microsoft doesn't like it. Microsoft liked the other one.
Microsoft will absolutely rewrite it for you if you let them.
It's awkward. It should say the projected enrollment of 2,500 students.
The,
Yeah, you know, honestly, he's right. The projected enrollment of 25, absolutely. We'll get it in the end.
$24.99.
Okay.
That's if you include the number of students who are typically
Microsoft
outed.
still doesn't like it though, Neil.
What?
Who are outed anyway.
well, I don't care what Microsoft likes.
I am going to suggest a semicolon after the word model,
I'm going to move the question.
and then you can move the question. Yeah, right.
Oh,
Because they're,
Microsoft likes it.
I knew that would fix
I
it,
like-
see? Ha!
Oh, man.
Grammarians win all the time.
I like the semicolon, very good.
Maybe.
It's a really
Microsoft
bad
will
sign
come up
when you
with
begin to
funding.
think like Microsoft Word.
all right, let's have a little order here. We have a motion. Do we have a second?
Seconded.
Is there any other discussion?
Kramer,
Go,
yes.
Phil.
Kramer, yes.
Cole, yes.
Sandman, yes.
Waschinsky, yes.
Goldstein, yes.
DeWitt, yes.
Morse, yes.
So, yes.
Next.
All right.
Oh, Microsoft doesn't like it anymore.
Quick, let's go on, let's go on.
Should have been a comma.
Should have been a full colon could have done it.
Throw in a couple more.
You know it's getting late.
We're almost there. We are definitely almost there.
So we're now,
You know, I was suggesting that we have a keg at the end of the last meeting next time. I think we should have a keg now.
don't make, Michael, don't make any assumptions until we're done, please.
Is it cake or keg?
Keg,
I
keg,
second
keg for
the motion
everybody.
for the
Keg.
keg.
K-E-G.
Keg, K-E-G,
Oh, I thought you were saying
alcohol.
C-A-K-E. Good, my faith in you is restored.
I'm glad this is all being recorded.
I'll go on record saying we need a keg.
Okay,
All right.
Old Lincoln School.
Oh, wait a minute.
Well, Rebecca's has a second high school.
Yes.
Oh, so does Betsy's, out of different order.
Where do we go with this further study and a robust community process, or did we?
Didn't go anywhere with it.
We're covered, that's covered.
Where's,
We're covered.
Where?
The
this
motion-
is the Rebecca's.